Welcome to the Board of Commissioners meeting. Today is Wednesday, May 29th, 2024. I will now call the meeting to order and ask that everyone join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there any additions or corrections to the current agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to amend the agenda and add a item that has been discussed and voted on before, and then you made a motion and it was voted on. I have heard that that will not be recognized, and it's on the organizational chart, so I'd like to add an organizational chart item on the agenda with a resolution number 2024-0128. Under regular business.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Approval of minutes, May 22nd, 2024. Any corrections?
None.
Good here.
Okay. Approval of warrant registers and payroll rosters.
Mr. Chairman, this morning we have 3 vouchers. The first, I move to approve salary clearing payroll and emergency management payroll in the amount of $1,217,437.88, and note that it has been reviewed by 2 members of the auditor's office.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Next, I have a fund expenditure in the amount of $1,011,514.59, and again, it's been reviewed by 2 members of the auditor's office and signed by the county administrator.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 I have a third this morning, Mr. Chairman, UMPWA, which is for our P cards, and this is a current expense or fund expenditure in the amount of I move to approve fund expenditure in the amount of $11,574.34, and again, reviewed by 2 members of the auditor's office and signed off by the county administrator.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Moving on to public comment. Is there anyone in the room for public comment? If so, please come forward. You have 3 minutes, and please state your name.
Is it on? Okay. Angie Manarola, there it is. I just wanted to encourage you guys to reach out to the Benton County Commissioners and schedule a bi-county meeting. I think it's time that I've heard a lot of the several meetings here. There's questions about the Recovery Center and the Sobering Center, so I think it's time to get together again for some clarification and some questions that you guys might have, and it gives everybody from both counties residents a chance to know what's going on. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else in the room for public comment?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Chris Hollingsworth. Just wanted to give a quick report on last year's assessment Board of Equalization numbers. Real brief, according to the BOE, typically the hearings last till about the last week of November, first week of December. And that's, excuse me, that's one hearing per week. Not hearing, one day of hearings. This past year, they had hearings all the way through the end of March. 2 hearings, 2 days of hearings per week. So we went twice as long with double the amount of hearings. Just kind of give you a little bit of how many hearings we were getting for the Board of Equalization. Of those petitions, 297 were received, 4 were denied for late or incomplete reasons, 48 withdrew, 31 of those were stipulated, 171 were confirmed or sustained. That number isn't broken down on were they sustained because they didn't win their appeal or they didn't show up to their appeal. However, the board the ones that did come to the appeal, they stipulated at the hearing 33 of them, meaning that they could have stipulated them before they even got to the hearing. But in my opinion, it looks like they were playing games, waiting to see if they were going to show before they said, okay, yeah, we'll give you what you asked for. And then 14 were reduced and 19 proposed new values. Of those that were reduced, 5 of them have been now, by the assessor's office, been sent to the BTA, the Board of Tax Assessment or Tax Appeal, because the county now is appealing the appeal that the board gave them. One of the things I hear from the assessor's office is the need to be fair and equitable, which I can appreciate. The Board of Equalization, when they hear the hearing and they side with the owner, the taxpayer, it takes that burden, if you will, of fair and equitable off the shoulders of the assessor's office. The Board of Equalization says, okay, we see your data, we see the plaintiff's data, we're going to side with the plaintiff, the homeowner. It takes that burden off their shoulders, but for some reason they're going above that to bring that burden back on and take it to the BTA, which I'm not quite sure. In my situation, I appealed over essentially $35,000. Doing a cost-benefit analysis doesn't make sense, but I was bored and I knew I was right, so I wanted to have a little fun, which I won. I guess I'll close, but the gist of it is that they're appealing me for essentially $198 in tax revenue. Curious how many hours were spent at the Board of Equalization, how many hours were spent appealing this versus how many dollars they're going to receive if they were to win. I don't think it pencils out.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room for public comment? Do we have any callers on the phone? All right. Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve consent agenda items 1 through 5.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Consent agenda passes. Moving on to regular business. We will start with the amendment by Commissioner Didier.
Mr. Chairman, on the meeting of 3/27/2024, there was a organizational chart that was presented to the commissioners and was passed. Then in April 3rd meeting, you made a motion to put the clerk of the board back underneath the commissioners. And I have heard through the grapevine that that being not on the agenda would not be approved and would not be recognized. So my request is that we bring this forth on an agenda item and put it in a resolution with it, which would be 2024-0128, which would be the next resolution on our regular business items today. So we're out of order, but it would be 0128. And that would put the clerk back underneath your direction, because this is your meeting, and you should be in charge of the agenda.
Commissioners, if I may,
Yeah.
I think we need a written resolution.
Pull the mic in closer.
Oh, I think we need a written resolution here. That was the issue, I think, with the last one, that the resolution was appealed, or repealed rather, by a motion. I think the proper procedure would be just to have a written resolution that rescinds that, and then I think Commissioner Bauman had a good point that we want to make sure we know what our org chart is. If we rescind that resolution, we want to make sure what we have in place. So it may be worthwhile to, with that resolution, establish what our org chart is. But we can come back, I think, in a week if the commissioners wish, and have a resolution that meets those
I think
requirements.
that would be proper.
And Chair, if I may,
Yes.
so you know, respectfully, Commissioner Didier, I don't know why we keep going back and forth on this. I've talked to the chair about it, and the issue all along was having an org chart that makes sense for the commissioner's office. And the chair does have complete control of the agenda, so that's not even an issue. That's kind of a red herring. So I've talked to the chair about this, and the issue that he expressed to me, he was concerned that I was trying to make my assistant the county administrator in the org chart, which was not true. Remembering that conversation, he thought there might be a fiscal impact. Not true. There's going to be no fiscal impact. Then some of the other issues are, look, I've got to sign off on her time card. I have to make sure, you know, vacations are taken. You know, she's coming into work. So you guys are here a limited time because you have other jobs, obviously. So there has to be somebody that's managing her. And I'll say this for the record, you know, when she first started, Karen used to be within your org chart because of, you know, personnel issues that I won't get into, so that she thought she was above the county administrator, and that's just not gonna work. I mean, I'll tell you that fundamentally, if she's running to you guys, if she doesn't like something, and I'm her manager, it's just gonna create a lot of discontent and discord. The chair has the power, but she needs someone to manage her, so there's an actual org chart within the function of the commissioner's office. You guys are policymakers. I'm a manager of the county. Those are two different functions. So you got to understand, you know, because all that's going to do is create a fissure between me and her. You know, she's going to run to you, Clint, and say, oh, Mike did this. You know, I'm just being real with you guys right now. It's not going to work.
So you're the manager of the county under our direction.
Absolutely.
You don't do anything without our approval, but yet I'm seeing things all over the courthouse that are being done without our approval.
Like
And it's
what?
costing us money.
Name something.
The window in the commissioner's office?
I have a $25,000 spending authority, and I'm certainly not going to risk anybody's safety when they're telling me.
And I think that we need to look at that $25,000 spending policy when we go to the extreme of cutting our travel budget to zero to save this
Well,
county
the chair
money.
was aware of it, so was Commissioner
You told me you were
Bauman.
getting a quote.
We're getting off subject, but the thing is, that clerk of the board works for us to put the agenda together. You can manage her, you can work with her, you don't have to have her 3 deep behind the government affairs coordinator.
The org chart isn't about, you know, who's above who in this particular instance. It's about management function and running the office cohesively. She was, the clerk historically has always been under the county administrator. The clerk was brought in because she felt like, you know, she wasn't getting along with one of the commissioners. So that was the history of that.
We know the history.
Well,
And it
yeah.
worked really well. When I was the chair, I worked with the clerk on the agenda, and we had no problem with the organizational chart at that time, and I don't think we'll have a problem now. And I would like to see the clerk work with the chair and make sure the agenda is put
But
forward.
understand that you guys are going to be signing off on her time card, watching her PTO.
Mr.
making
Gonzalez,
sure-
you're the administrator. That's your job. That's your job.
Quite frankly, if she's not under me, I can't manage her.
We don't want you to manage her. We would just want you to assist her. That's your job
Absolutely,
to do her
I
time
always
card.
assist her, 100%.
That's your
I just
job.
don't see the need to, I mean, it's just gonna create a fissure between, the office.
It's all in the optics of control, Mr. Gonzalez.
And you're trying to control her.
No, no, we don't want you to control her. That's the key.
Okay, fine.
All right, so we'll move this on to next week's agenda.
And Mr. Commissioner Mullen, you and legal will get together for this organizational chart. You can use this piece if you'd like.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I just make a brief insertion? When we're talking about the agenda, I'm just concerned because there's something that's fundamentally important for this board to understand. The board gets to control the agenda. There's not one of the commissioners that has any more control over the authority of the agenda than any other commissioner. I just want to make sure, because if Commissioner Didier has an item that he wants to bring forward, he has just as much right as the chair to bring an item before the board or any of the commissioners. I just want to make sure it's very clear that all three of you functioning as the board, and there's a lot of background information that we've generated guidance for, and I think Jeff has been working with Mike as well as far as that process to ensure that each of the commissioners has an equal opportunity to provide items for the agenda. Again, this is kind of it's a fine line, because obviously you can't have like a serial meeting, but each one of the commissioners has to have an equal opportunity to provide input for what they see is important being on the agenda. And the reason I bring that up, because I think it's equally important when we get down to the discussion about the workshop function, it's kind of a similar issue. I want to make it very clear that the board is the one that decides what items and controls how the board wants to run the workshop. If the board, rather than any one particular member of the board, wants to hear input from the public, I think that's a great opportunity for the board to gather information. Workshops are very different from the regular meeting. The workshops are basically allows for interactivity if the board chooses. It also allows for presentation by different members of the community to come in. Like, for instance, when we have presentations about mental health issues, that is a great opportunity during a workshop where there might be competing interests. There might be multiple people that want to give the board information about a topic for discussion before the board ends up putting that onto an agenda item at a future meeting. But that is really the key for, as the board develops its workshop policy, I just want to make sure it's clear related to the agenda that all three members of the board have an equal opportunity to basically vote and decide who they would like to hear from, how they would like to hear from a person. Sometimes there's going to be reasons to maybe deviate from the guidelines that are being proposed for the board. I think maybe there should be like a catch-all in there that if during a workshop the board decides that they want to deviate and hear from somebody, the board's certainly able to do that. I think having some guidelines is helpful, but it really is a board decision-making matter, and all three members of the board are in charge and can control that. So I just wanted to add that as we talk about agendas, and it does relate to the workshop discussion and guidance. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Resolution 2024-0126, presented by Derek Bratton.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I need to say that I do have a conflict with this, and so I will not be voting nor interacting in this process, as I have a conflict.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, just a second, I apologize.
I just wanted to add, Mr. Baumann, if you're indicating that you have a conflict on this, that means that you wouldn't be participating. Typically, the practice would be you step out of the room for the duration of the conversation. The reason for that, I think, is people could look at nonverbal communication or other information, and if you're putting on the record that you do have a conflict, it would be appropriate to basically step out of the room. That would just be my guidance. And we'll make sure that we bring you back in if that's what you choose to do. Again, that's just
Very good.
my
I'm
guidance.
happy to do that.
I'm not requesting that. I'm not going to be looking at you for facial expressions.
Sorry about that. It's always different when you're in a different setting. Yes, this is a request by Benjamin Bauman, owner of Aquatech Irrigation Supply, to move their current location, which is farther up north along, well, it's up north. I don't know exactly where.
Glade Road.
Glade Road, that's what I
Yeah.
thought, but I didn't want to misspeak. You see their sign coming in when you're on 395.
Glade Road, Glade
been-
Road. On
They
Glade
also,
Road.
they also have a
Sign on
billboard on 395. So, they are seeking to move to a new location. Okay. The location is 3251 Glade North Road, parcel number 124250091. The property is split zoned. The north, or the south portion of it is AP20, and the north portion is I2. Comp plan designation is agricultural and rural industrial, and the property size is approximately 4.01 acres. South of Self Landing, west of Glade Road, or Glade North Road, and north of Clark Road. As mentioned, it's an irrigation supply store. This is full-scale, like agricultural irrigation. It's not like Lowe's residential backyard irrigation supplies. The area of the property to be used, 8,100 square feet, and then potentially in the future, a 6,000 square foot future fabrication shop. And then the site plan shows the irrigation store outside pipe storage area, well house and parking for the public and service trucks. This is the site. It's the little red box there right next to that industrialized area. Some pictures of the property. This is the site plan. Okay. So shop, potential future fabrication. This is where they'll be storing the pipe, parking. So on or about March 7th, staff sent notices to technical agencies, property owners within 1 mile of Franklin County Graphic. We also posted a pending land use action sign on the property and registered it on the SEPA registry as 202-400-965. Property, as mentioned, is split. The proposed project is located in the AP20 zone portion of the property. If it had been located in the I2 portion, then it would not require a permit, or a conditional use permit. It would have just required a straight building permit. However, because of just the orientation of the property, the applicant has determined that the south portion is preferred, and may at a future date seek to rezone it, but that would have to occur through the comp plan update, and we'll address that at that time. Staff will probably be recommending to go ahead and rezone that property to I2 at the time, or basically change its comp plan designation from agriculture to industrial. Application, we already said that. The basis, we don't have a call out specifically for this as a listed conditional use. The closest comparison would be somewhere between agricultural supply store and a contractor's yard due to the outlay of the pipe. But both uses are classified as a conditional use in the AP20 zone. So pretty standard comments. Approach permit will be required. Any utility extension crossing Franklin County roads will be addressed at the time of application. Ecology submitted their standard comments. If you're doing this, then do that. They'll need to get a building permit, and then they'll have to meet the current 2021 codes. And they'll need to abide by what we call the fire setbacks, meaning 20 on the sides because there's no fire hydrants, or they would need to install approved fire suppression system. Most people don't go that route. But we have, planning commission, based on staff's recommended, has determined that the proposal is in accordance with the goals and policies of county development regulations and comprehensive plan. will not adversely affect the public, will be constructed, maintained, and operated to be in harmony with the existing or intended character. As you saw in the aerial, there's a bunch of industrial right adjacent to it. Over time, this area will probably continue to grow in that direction. Location and height of the structure and site design will not discourage the development of permitted uses in the general vicinity. Won't be any more objectionable to nearby properties by reason of noise. It's just a retail, basically. And generally speaking, they tend to go to the location as opposed to having, you know, people pick up, except for on occasion, but mostly they're going out. They will have, of course, public access and customers, but it won't be that significant. And it will not endanger the public health, safety, or general welfare. In addition to the standard conditional use permit language, they'll need to comply with Franklin County Public Works conditions, Washington State Department of Ecology, and Franklin County Planning and Building. And I do have a recommended motion if you have any desire for that, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
So it was publicly noticed right before the planning commission,
Correct.
no complaints or?
No, we got no comments on,
All right.
in fact, we got no comments on either of the proposals before you today. These are pretty straightforward.
All right, thank you.
And I might just add that there's already a lot of commercial on both sides of the road. The speed limit is down to 45 through there. It's a perfect location. As Derek stated, this is going to be commercial land. before we know
Yeah,
it.
we will be looking at that very closely with the comp plan update
Yeah.
and looking to make sure we want to maintain, especially for these cut small parcels, is it really logical to keep them as agriculture? If you can't really produce agriculture on them.
No, you can't. That basically has a wasteway behind it. It's a very
Yeah.
weird piece of ground. There's no way of putting a pivot on there, so yeah, it is gonna be commercial.
All right, with no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve Resolution 2024-0126, Aquatech Bauman closed record hearing.
This has been a motion, I'll second it. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Resolution passes.
Thank you.
Just move on.
So resolution 2024-0127. Request to convert an existing residence to a DADU presented by Derek Bratton, Planning Commission.
Are we on number 20-0127?
Yes.
I received a call. There was a scrivener's error in the resolution that you have before you, where there was a condition requested that was not actually required or relevant to this proposal. That has been stricken. I've got a new version that I will give to the clerk that has that correction in it. On page 5, condition 6 regarded the irrigation store. Basically talked to about how if somebody abandons the irrigation store for more than 12 months, then they will lose the conditional use permit. Well, that has absolutely nothing to do with a detached accessory dwelling unit. That was a mistake on staff's part. We didn't catch it. So I do apologize for any confusion on that. However, it's not a major condition or anything regarding that, and we basically consider that a scrivener's error. So as mentioned, it's a conditional use permit for a detached accessory dwelling unit. The location is 140 Radar Hill Road, Othello, Washington, parcel number 120040544. Zoning is rural residential, RR5. Rural remote is the comp plan designation, and the property size is approximately 5 acres. Property is generally located south of State Route 24, west of Radar Hill Road, southwest of Mail Road, southeast of Sage Hill Road, and approximately 450 feet south of the Franklin-Adams County line. Now we get these requests occasionally. We've had already, I believe, one this year, or it was late last year. Generally speaking, a DADU application is somebody bringing in a new unit onto their house, but occasionally what's going on is they have an old existing unit, often occupied by an aged relative. They come in, they want to build a bigger house, but they want to keep that one on the property and maintain it. So basically the way we do that is we do this DADU, and at the time of final build on the new house, what happens is the existing primary use converts to an accessory use, in this case a dwelling unit, and then the new home at the time of certificate of occupancy becomes the primary on the property. The existing structure, well, we'll get into that. So as mentioned, it's to allow for the conversion of an existing residence to be classified as a detached accessory dwelling unit, or DADU, after the completion of their new residence. The existing single-family dwelling is approximately 1,600 square foot, which is the limit. You're not allowed to have a detached accessory dwelling unit that exceeds 1,600 square foot. This one falls below it and therefore does qualify. The site plan will feature the site access, location of the existing home, the location of the proposed new single-family dwelling, the existing septic system, well, water supply line, and the adjoining road. There's the property. Whoops, not that one, it's that one right there. Some pictures of the property. The blue on the upper left is the existing home. It's a little hard to see. There's a lot going on, but you know, so this is the length of the property. They're looking to locate. These are the outbuildings. That's the, I believe that's the. It's hard for me to even read it, but we can read it when we're looking at it up close. But so that's the general site plan. We've reviewed it. There's no issues. They've got the appropriate separations and other requirements with the property. They also may need to get some further approval from Benton Franklin Health Department regarding their well and septic. That'll be determined at the time of final build for the new unit. That will all be based on the number of bathrooms. Most likely they'll need to install an additional septic. And then I would say they've got a pretty good chance of being able to just use the existing well. But that's going to be up to the health department. So it is for the purpose of taking care of an aged relative, as I mentioned, who's currently living in the house. The proposed DAU does not exceed 1,600 square feet. A DADU is permitted if the parcel is 2 acres or larger. This is a 5-acre parcel. Cannot exceed 1,600 square feet, and that includes the garage. That's the entire structure. Shall not exceed 1,600 square feet. And they may be permitted through a CUP for care for aged relatives and or permanent hired help, such as like 24-hour nursing or things like that. So on March 7th, technical agencies, property owners within Mile and Franklin County Graphic was sent notices, posted a pending land use action on the property on March 21st, and it was registered in the SEPA registry as 202-400-966. And approach permit will be required. Any utility extensions, which is unlikely, crossing county roads will be addressed at the time of application. Again, Ecology sent their standard if this, then that letter. They'll need to get a building permit for the house, the new house. Any modifications to the existing structure will need to comply with current code. So if they were to like add on to it or something weird like that, those additions would have to meet the current code. Gets kind of weird. Both, the property cannot be split. So if they go to sell the property, both houses go with the property. That's unless they arrange it such that in the zoning changes to allow for further subdivision at a future date. However, that's not likely in this case. Can't be used for other than the intended purpose, including you're not even supposed to generally operate businesses or anything like that out there. These are just really to provide assistance to folks. And they'll have to meet all the requirements associated with 17.66060 detached accessory dwelling units. Proposed use in the RR5 zoning is in accordance with the goals and policy of the county development regulations and comprehensive plan, will not adversely affect public infrastructure. It'll be constructed, maintained, and operated. That's what that whole area is small lots with houses and outbuildings on them. The location and height of the structure will not discourage the development. Again, it's just pretty much what you see out there anyways. It's not going to be any more objectionable. It's just it's not adding a lot of density or anything like that. It's just a second unit. And it will not endanger the public health, safety, or general welfare. They'll need to meet the conditions of Franklin County Public Works, Washington Department of Ecology, and the Planning and Building Department. Whoops. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? None? Commissioner Baumann, have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of maybe unusual observations and then one question. I really appreciate seeing a applicant-provided site plan. I appreciate and understand that it's not maybe as clean and crisp as if you had gone and paid a lot of money for it, but I appreciate you working with an applicant to accept something that they were able to generate themselves and not to add additional cost to their efforts to my second comment, which is provide for family in a time whenever families can continue to be fractured more and more, and you working diligently with them to do that so that they can take care of family. I really, really appreciate that and wanted to make that observation. I think I asked this question before, and I'm sure that you gave me an answer, but I want to ask it again. At what point will this become a administrative process?
We will be recommending that soon. I mean, if desired by the board, I can do that now. I mean, start that process independent of the zoning code. At any time, the board, two members of the board can direct staff to basically drop what we're doing and make changes. We have a process and a plan, as to how we're going to lay these things out. However, when things come up where there's specific concerns or areas of the code that the board desires us to address, we're at the board's, we're here to help. All we need is direction from the board and to target those. What that does is it tells us the level of priority for the board, such that, okay, that's an issue, address it as you get to it. Or, hey, I want this addressed imminently, and the rest of the board agrees. Any of those options work for us. We're here to serve.
My response, I guess, would just be, I do appreciate what good policy looks like, and would encourage you to work on that process. And my motivation is trying to provide less regulation and allow people to do this kind of thing and take care of their family in a shorter amount of time. So,
and that also brings, that's, yeah. And like I said, that is definitely, we are kicking off the zoning code thing. There'll be a workshop where we're bringing up the new planning commissioners. That's going to be next week. It's just a summary of, hey, this is what's been going on. They've actually, some of the members have seen this 3 times because we keep getting new members. But we've got a pretty stable board, commission right now. I don't see any changes. We're gonna push this through, and we're still shooting for having a draft version to the board by the end of the year.
Thank you for your efforts on this. I really appreciate it.
With no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move for approval of Resolution 2024-027 as presented.
0127.
Yeah, 0127.
I'm sorry, Resolution 2024-0127.
I second.
It's been a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you. Public hearing. I will now open the public hearing for Resolution 2024-0119, approval of Booker auction contract for Hapo Center horse stall auction. Do we have any,
Chair, I'll let Jeff kind of weigh in here. He and I have been working on the resolution for quite some time now, and so Jeff, I'll let you take it away.
Right, so we have, just to sort of give a little bit of background information, we, at the last hearing, had discovered, I guess incorrectly, that the matter had not been publicly noticed in the graphic. It turns out it has been for 2 weeks. Oh, sorry, so the matter has been noticed in the graphic. The pending surplus resolution that's before the board today. So it was noticed in the graphic for 2 consecutive weeks, at least 10 days prior to today's hearing. So I think the notice piece is satisfied. I guess it might be better if the resolution had a little bit clearer language that we are declaring it surplus today, but I think it's fine because we do say in the first whereas clause that we're holding a hearing today and declaring it surplus. Perhaps if the board does want to adopt the resolution, we could interlineate there in the bottom portion in the operative language that we are actually declaring it surplus today and directing Booker Auction to coordinate with the county executive as well as the treasurer. I know there was some concern on the treasurer's part at last week's hearing.
Hey, Jeff, I'm sorry, can I interrupt just for a second?
Go ahead.
I would ask if we could, before the board takes further action or consideration, can we put this down to the bottom of the agenda, have an executive session prior to the board taking any action on this, so we could have a discussion with the board on the section for legal risk and other issues related to it. I want to make sure that we have a candid discussion with the board, with the treasurer prior to moving forward. And
So,
I think that would be appropriate.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
before any more discussion, on March 28th, we put an announcement out that this was going to be talked at the April 10th meeting. That meeting was canceled. Then we put it out there for another, in the paper again, and it was for April 17th meeting. We have not given the public 2 weeks' notice that we were going to talk about it today. And I don't know why we're rushing this so hard, because I had talked to Booker Auction, and they're pushing this clear out to August. So why are we rushing it? Because he told me they got to have time to advertise. Yeah, sure, we think it's out there, but do we want to get the biggest bang for the buck? Do we want to make the most money? Why are we pushing this so hard to get it approved today? Let's give it the 2-week notice from when it, because today, the graphic comes out, it was put in the P.O. boxes yesterday, or today. It's put in the P.O. boxes today. How are the people going to know that to come to the meeting at 9 o'clock? It doesn't get to the rural residents until tomorrow. They don't even get notice that it was even today, because this graphic comes out, put in the P.O. boxes today, delivered tomorrow. for the meeting today. This is convoluted. We got a mess going on here. Let's prolong this, push it back 2 weeks, do it correctly. We've given notice, and let's give the notice for the meeting. Today is what would that be for the meeting in 2 weeks? We've got to do this right, or we're gonna have one person objects to selling that, and we got a problem.
And Commissioner Didier, along with that, the date, I think, of the proposed auction actually falls on a county holiday. That is kind of problematic because this is kind of a two-part process. One requires action of this legislative body to take action first, and then once the board declares something surplus, the coordination for the auction really falls under the Office of the Treasurer. And I want to make sure that Ms. Kelsler is satisfied with the process because really that's upon her name. It's her office's responsibility, and I want to make sure she's comfortable with it. Her office is in conflict that week as well because that's I think their statewide treasurers meeting, so they have a conference. I know that's a training week also for prosecutors. But that's problematic in and of itself. And if the board is going to entertain a continuance to make sure that we have coordination to where we could declare something surplus, I did talk to Jeff earlier about it. It is included in the resolution. I think it should have been listed clearly on the agenda item for that. But I would just ask, as you point out, if there is no rush and really the county gets the best bang for the buck by giving whatever auction house the board chooses to go with as much time as possible, I think that would be helpful. So I would just ask, if the board's going to do that, I don't think we need an executive session. If they're going to postpone, continue it out for the satisfaction of the parties. I just want to make sure we gave each of the board members an opportunity to address that. And if there's a question that really dives into any kind of the legal areas, I would prefer that be discussed in executive session. But if there's a postponement, there's no need for that.
So, question, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So would it be appropriate for us to say that in 2 weeks from today, which would be June the 12th, to ask that the PA's office and the treasurer's office get together with our organizations that are going to administer this? I believe that there's two, the operator of the HAPO Center as well as Mr. Booker, and that those four entities get together and come back on the 12th and say this is what we need to do and this is how we need to do it, and then we proceed at that point. Is that appropriate?
Yeah, I think the important part is I think we're trying to streamline this, and really that creates a little bit of the confusion. We have to have a process where we've done the notice to declare the property surplus, declare that surplus, and then go into the next thing. And I think what we've tried to do is just kind of merge those in. I don't think that's necessarily legally problematic, but I think for clarification and clarity to get Treasurer's Office involved, having those as separate items listed on the agenda so we could do that, and making sure that it's at a time, date, and place, and with the auction house coordination with Ms. Kelsler's office. I think that would be the best way to do it and ensure everybody's on board. So thank you for the board's concern.
Does that satisfy what your thoughts are?
Yes,
Yes.
but in order to put it into the graphic, and I'm asking Teresa, the next graphic would be next week. For 2 weeks after that, it would push us back one more week, correct?
Yes, so the graphic only makes the post on Thursday. So if you want to post,
It'd be the 19th that we'd be looking in June to have the open public hearing.
it will be posted on June 6th and then June 13th, which is on Thursday. And I believe the auction, it was scheduled for the 17th or 19th. I cannot recall it right now. But the 6th and the 13th of June, it will be posted.
Yeah.
If that's the wish.
And that would be for the meeting of the 19th, and that would be proper notice, 2 weeks' notice.
And Commissioners, maybe it would also help, I think, in talking to Ms. Kelsler, it might make sense if we could add this maybe onto the next week's workshop discussion, so that way there could be a discussion with it to kind of flesh out some of these issues, and that way
Yeah.
all parties have been coordinated, and I think that still moves us along just fine. I think that will be beneficial to address your concerns, Commissioner Drew.
So let's do that. Let's put it on next week's workshop. And I thought that's what we did last week, and I thought that's what was going to happen today, but obviously it did not. So it needs to be on next week's workshop meeting so that we can address and have a chart a path forward.
Thank you.
That is proper. Thank you.
So I'll close the public hearing at this point and move on to public comment. Is there anyone in the room for public comment? If so, please state your name and you have 3 minutes. No, not with mine.
The public comment pertaining to the public hearing.
That was for
Okay,
the
public hearing only. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Administrator updates, Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Chair. I've obviously been working on the horse stall issue, so we'll get that to a workshop next meeting. For the public, letting them know we've organized the Hapo Center Master Plan kickoff between the City of Pasco and the Franklin County Commissioners. That'll be June 4th here at the Hapo Center. The public is welcome. The City Council and the Board of Commissioners will get together along with HWL to kick off the master planning session that will really set a roadmap for the Hapo Center and the future of it. Also been working with our Government Affairs Coordinator, Jason Valentine, for OPD forum to go over the issues that are happening statewide. That'll be here June 12th at 11 a.m. here at the Hapo Center. So our regional legislators will be a part of that. It really has become a state issue with some of the funding mechanisms that are happening. Working on a .09 committee meeting with Port of Pasco and been working with the multiple jurisdictions and our Government Affairs Coordinator on the E911 presentation that you'll see here shortly. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Commissioner Baumann.
BCES Executive Board meeting, where that we, after figuring out with our counterparts across the river that our county administrator passed the baton to me, that I will sit on that executive board, and both the board and we felt that that was a more successful path forward for decision making. Went to a Memorial Day service. Would ask for a moment of personal privilege if the chair is willing. I went to a memorial service, and it has taken new meaning for me, as my son is one of the newest soldiers in the U.S. Army and has committed to stand on the front line on our behalf. So I'm proud and thankful for that. Also, a few weeks back, we met with a developer that had some, that asked for an audience with the county for doing a project that would be economically stimulating for the county, and so was able to meet with some of our staff and with them again, and one of our representatives, one of our senators, and had a very productive conversation there, and feel like that a lot of work to be done to see if it's a viable opportunity, but appreciate everybody's involvement there. Coordinating with Tridec and some businesses here in Franklin County for some other opportunities that may or may not exist. We're exploring, and phone calls and different meetings, and that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Didier.
Last week was a pretty light week, just had workforce development meeting. Was contacted by a nurse over in Idaho, Laura Demery, who has reached out, and they're having an event in Spokane called React 19 event, Restoring Hope for the Injured. And it's about all the casualties that have taken place with the vaccination shot. She has put together a resolution with 3 counties in Idaho, and they are Washington County, Boise County, and Adams County, where they have a resolution against the genetic shot currently on the child vaccine schedule, so that they are locally making a statement that the people who live in that county do not have to have their children vaccinated with this COVID-19 vaccination that seems to have harmful effects on a lot of different people. And they're reaching out to, they reached out to me, and they were asking if they could come present. So I'm bringing this to the Board of Commissioners for if you would like to see this presentation, because they have some pretty well-known doctors. They, on the event that they're doing up there to raise money for these families of people that are injured that don't have any help. They have John Stockton, Ken Ruckers, a lot of pretty named people big-name people from the past that are coming forth and helping raise money for the people that have been injured on this. So I think it just brings awareness and gets people to look at this, what's going on in our world today as far as vaccines. Thank you.
So last week had the agenda meeting with Administrator Mr. Gonzalez. Also met with citizens expressing their concerns about the advertisement of surplus property sales, and had the tri-deck meeting. And that concludes my updates. So we'll move on to administrator office business.
Thank you, Chair. One thing that I wanted to discuss was the move of WSU Extension into the Michael Davidson building. We've gone back and forth and just looking for some clear direction from the board. Some anecdotal things I've heard recently, you know, kids are still going there for 4-H, and it's just not the proper place for them to be. The Davidson building would offer a much better place for them to go. It's ready to go for WSU Extension. They would be excited to move into there. So would like to get that moving in a direction. So I'll open it up for discussion if you guys want to give me direction on that.
So what are the concerns that WSU has about moving into the Davidson building?
No concerns moving in. They're actually excited to move in there possibly. The concerns that I think we've been on the record about, just the homeless population that at times will engage with families, and you know, some of the safety concerns there with 4-Hers in particular, puts a better face on WSU Extension. Obviously we have a huge ag community, so for them I think it's a nice place for them to go. Really just a positive place, and I think it's time that we get using the Davidson building. There's not going to be a lot of things necessary to fix. Commissioner Baumann and myself were in there not too long ago, and we looked at it, and I mean it's ready to go. They just need to move in, maybe a little bit of furniture here and there. So that's something I would like to do and get them moving in the right direction. That opens up the extension building. There's been some talks of surplusing the extension building. We've been working on this property management policy, which has been stalled. So I think we need to get that also moving in the right direction, and get that to the point where we get it codified. So those are really the main things that I wanted to bring up in this session.
Well, I would agree that that does give a much better location and perspective for our young citizens here in Franklin County to go to the extension agent. The current location is kind of, I would call it depressing if I was a young person wanting to go down there. I think it would give the extension office a much needed and greatly appreciated format, place to meet.
It's
so.
an older building, and we've had some talks with the Benton Franklin Health District, and they've expressed their desire to perhaps move out of there too. I know they've been kind of beating the bushes, looking around at different properties, and you know, nothing has been determined at this point. It's really just talks between the agencies, but certainly is a desire for them to move and get to a spot where they can serve their customers more effectively and efficiently. So, but those are things on the floor. So if I can get some consensus and we can work on that, and I know Commissioner Baumann has said he would help me with that process if that's the direction the board would like to take.
Any thoughts, Commissioner Didier?
I wanted the WSU extension in there a long time ago. It's been sitting empty. We bought a building and we haven't been utilizing it. So yes, I'm in 100% agreement with WSU moving in there, yes.
Thank you.
I'd had the opportunity to go visit with our administrator there, Dr. Tim Waters, and really appreciated understanding what his needs are there. And one of our doctors that works there at the extension literally his office is in a closet and they need the space. The space is ready for them at the 1310 building, and I would be in favor of getting that underway as quickly as we can.
Well, I think you have your consensus.
Okay, thank you, sir, appreciate it. That's all I've got, thank you.
All right. We'll now open it up to public comment. Is there anyone in the room for public comment? If so, please state your name, and you have 3 minutes. Seeing none, do we have any callers on the line? No calls. Is there any need for executive session today?
Sean, apparently so? Yeah.
If we could go in under RCW 4230-110, under paragraph 1I, potential litigation, meet with legal counsel. I'd ask that the members of the board, along with Jeff and I from the legal team, meet with the board for up to 15 minutes, possibly earlier, but we just need that time with the board.
All right, at this point, we'll go into executive session. The time is 10:01 for approximately 15 minutes. Thank you. So we've come out of executive session with no decisions being made. Is there any other business for the good of the county?
No, Chair, thank you.
At this point, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you. We'll be taking a short break and then coming back for the workshop agenda. So we'll be break for 10 minutes. Thank you. Time is 10:32. It's May 29th, 2024. We are here for the workshop. And I will call the workshop to order and approval of workshop agenda. Hearing no additions or comments, I will move forward with the approval and public comment. So public comment to the workshop agenda is for agenda items only. It is limited to 3 minutes. Public members may speak during the workshop at the approval of the Chair of the Board of Commissioners. Is there anyone in the room for public comment? If so, come forward, state your name. You have 3 minutes. Seeing none, do we have any callers on the line? Oh, yes, come forward, sir. This is agenda items only, because this is the workshop. It's the workshop discussion, so we are going to talk about the adoption of the Franklin County Capital Improvement Plan, the emergency 911 sales tax discussion, and the Lord's Sobering Center. Nothing else will be discussed.
I was just going to mention to you, this would be a wonderful opportunity for the Franklin County Commissioners to bring President Trump to a regional rally here at the facility. That's all.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the room for public comment with discussion to the workshop agenda items only? Yes, come forward.
Will, when the actual agenda item is in the discussion process, will you be allowed to speak then, or?
Yes, with the approval of the chair. Yes, thank you. So moving on, number 1, Resolution 2024, Adoption of Franklin County Capital Improvement Plan, presented by Derek Bratton, Planning Director.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is a request to adopt a new planning document called the Capital Improvement Plan. The Capital Improvement Plan is a budgeting tool. It's not a binding document. It's a reporting document, I guess is the best way to describe it. So basically what it is it's a list of all capital expenditures that exceed $10,000 and or are likely to last 5 years or longer, generally both. Not all expenditures are included. These are only things that are for the purpose of, say, building upgrades or long-term, like we know we've got to do these things over the course of time. So the purpose of it is to, 1, provide a snapshot. Basically, the year that we're in is the year that is, quote, real, meaning those have all been approved. Anything following the year, because will be reviewed and reapproved, so the capital improvement plan gets approved and reviewed as part of the budgeting process. So why this current version ends in '24? The reason for that is because this is the starting point. It expresses the 6 years that have existed from 2018 to now. What's in the current version, everything up to 23 has already been basically funded, and actually, for the most part, until maybe you get into some of the big projects in 22 or 23, they've already been completed. Because this is a starting point document. 24, all those projects listed in 24 were approved as part of the 2024 budget. The information provided and that populates that project list is as reported by either specific departments or through the auditor's department. So that's what that is. In the future, starting in 25, what will happen? Let's say there probably won't be any. Staff will go and coordinate with the auditor's department and the other departments to make sure that we have these projects listed. Then we will start working to speculate with the departments, what do you think you're gonna need over the next 6 years? So starting next year, the project list will run from 25 to 31. Then we just, each year at budget, and that's what the document's for. What it helps with is remembering, that's one thing. We have a lot of stuff that comes through, proposals, things like that. This documents those proposals and concepts, keeps them on our radar for the future years. And then the board, every year, will look at the projects, determine whether or not they want to fund this specific project this year, kick it out to a later year, or remove it from the list completely. You know, so it's a fluid document. We have a capital facilities plan that's provided as part of the comprehensive plan. However, the capital facilities plan can only be amended as part of a comprehensive plan amendment process. And when you open up the comprehensive plan for amendments, you open it up for anyone. So, and then also that project list only lists those projects that are directly related to levels of service. So levels of service are usually grades, like on a road, it'll have an intersection will have an LOS of, well, usually D is pretty common, but it's A, B, C, D, and then E is fail, which means that the system is broke and it needs to be fixed. It's very limited expenditures with regard to Franklin County. We only have so many things, primarily our roads, that relate to levels of service, specifically. The capital improvement plan not only includes those generally by reference to the STP, the State Transportation Plan, the 6-year plan developed by Public Works, but it also will include like software upgrades, maintenance and building improvements. See, these things don't directly relate to LOS, but we don't really have a single document where you can look and see, this is kind of what the county is looking to fund over the next X number of years. This is what our priorities are right now. But every year, it's reviewed, updated, and modified, or continued as it is. So my hope is that that help. Oh, the other thing is some projects have to be listed in either the comprehensive plan or a CIP. The other thing is that with the CIP, the board can amend and do whatever they want to with it whenever they want. This is a document, it's a policy document controlled by the board. The board at any point in time can say, hey, we need to amend the CIP. Another thing is sometimes emergencies arise where potentially a expenditure that was unexpected will arise. We can amend the CIP to reflect that emergency situation and continue it forward. So, so that's kind of it's kind of a hard, obtuse document, but it's really more of a planning and reporting. Staff does not vet or review the project, staff being planning. We just, hey, what projects are you doing? What are you looking for? They provide that information to us. You also have to have a logical or reasonable source of funding or it won't be included. It's not a wish list. It actually has to be, when they submit the project proposals, they actually have to show this is where we're getting the funding from. Until that's been established, it won't be included in the CIP. So it's not just a wish list. Is there any particular questions or curiosities anyone has? Because I can't really speak to the specific amounts because those are just reported to me. That information is each department or entity responsible for the project or the funds, expending the funds, are the ones that can answer those questions. We just put out a solicitation to the department, send us all your projects, tell us this information, then we put it in the table.
So your office will be orchestrating this?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Because it ties in with the capital facilities plan, but it's different. they interact, but kind of like the zoning code and the comprehensive plan. You know, the zoning code is based on the comprehensive plan. The CIP and the CFP both are relating to capital facilities, but the CFP is much more limited in scope as to what it addresses and the flexibility of the board to amend or interact with it. The CIP is a policy document, and it's a guidance tool. That's about the extent of it.
All right. Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Didier.
I have, on page 8 of this CIP, it says in September of 2002, voters approved a bond for $10.2 million for courthouse restoration, and in December 2005, Franklin County received a grant in the amount of $2.7 million for the historical restoration. The bond is expected to be retired in 2022. Did it retire?
Again, I would assume so.
Okay, so I'm just asking.
Yeah.
I know you said you didn't have the answers, but maybe you can look and see what is going on. Has that bond been retired? Next paragraph, voters approved a 0.3% sales tax for criminal justice in 2011. The county uses the 0.3% criminal justice tax limit tax general obligation debt service fund to pay for debt service costs for the jail project portion of the 2012 limited tax general obligation bonds, as well as criminal justice costs primary for the general fund. So is this 3% is still being collected? And I think we're done with the jail. I'm curious, is this
What
just
page?
going into our general fund?
What page are you on?
Page 8. Is this money just going into the general fund now? Because 1/10 of 1% brings in roughly about $3 million. So 3%, 0.3% is going to bring in a whole lot of money, and I'm curious of where all this money's going.
Mr. Chairman, I can answer that question.
Yes, Sheriff Raymond.
It's a 20-year, 0.3% law enforcement tax. The county utilized the money for construction of the sheriff's office, the jail, and went out basically to bond on those, and we're still paying on that debt. The rest of the money, which is about $200,000 a year that the county gets from that, goes into the operating budget inside the jail. I think it's somewhere, I think we're just 10 years into that now, the actual law enforcement tax, and its sunset clause was set way out.
2031, according to, on your information, is when it'll sunset.
Now, Pasco's side, Pasco hired some police officers. They built the municipal courts off the bottom of the jail, and I'm not sure where they put all that money. They actually get the lion's share of that law enforcement tax.
Okay. Then further down there, it says at the end of 2016 fiscal year, Franklin County had a total ending bond debt outstanding of $26,410,000 compared to $28,560,000 in 2015, a decrease of $2.15 million. Current bonded debt has funded construction of the RV park and the ice pavilion facilities. So I'm just getting clarity out there for the other commissioners. We bonded for that ice center. That's how it was paid for.
I can't find where you're at. I don't know if my pages are
It's
messed
under
up.
special revenues. The heading is special revenues. So we bonded for that ice pavilion. Pasco had no part of that. Also, at the end of 2016, the
Page
county
6.
had $2,382,202 in public work trust fund revenue debt compared to $2,600,000. And these funds are being used to finance county road infrastructure projects. We all know that $2 million isn't going to be that much money to do any paved roads. Did you find it?
Yeah, it's on page 6 and 7.
Oh, 6 and 7. On my printed copy, it's 8. As of 2024, the last of these dollars, this was the American Rescue Fund money. and it says as of 2024, the last of these dollars have been allocated. I think that statement's not true. I think we still have, we're in flux here of what we got available. We don't know yet until,
Okay.
all the,
This section here will be rewritten. This is based on information I had available at the
Okay.
time that I created this document. It is all accurate, but there's a little bit of a, like I said, when I bring this back, for the 2025 review, this will be all reviewed and updated. This is information that was basically, we have a start date of 18, kind of as far as the information included in this, running out to 24. The version that we come out with that then shifts, you know, again, these things will be looked at and fleshed out more.
and then I found here on mine, it's, the original corrections facility was built in 1986. It goes through that we're up to 334 beds. The project was financed through a 30-year public safety sales tax that was approved by the city of Pasco and county voters in 2011. So that'll sunset in 2041, not 2031, 2041. I believe I had one more thing on page 14, and that was on the emergency dispatch center, which we're gonna go over here in a few minutes. 650,000 for upgrades to the system's microwave transceivers, and 8 million for new upgraded radios, but that's on the workshop later.
Yeah, and that's the amount that was reported to me by IS.
Okay, that's all I've got, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Bellman, do you have questions?
Yeah, thank you, Derek. So this is our first one of these documents. What did we do previous to this?
We didn't have anything like this. We just, everything was listed in the comprehensive plan, and it didn't, well, I don't know what we had. I mean, there may have been other departments, or the auditor's office may have some document that I'm not aware of, but I'm saying the county didn't have a capital improvement plan. What we had was a capital facilities plan as part of the comprehensive plan, and we still will. It's just that this document is a more flexible document. It's similar to what you see with transportation. You know, a transportation department will develop a 20-year plan. Then they'll have these 6-year plans that implement that plan. This is kind of along those same lines. It gets a little bit more detailed, and like I said, covers other expenditures and capital infrastructure costs and stuff that the CFP doesn't. So this is broader and covers more items and provides the county with more flexibility with regard to the expenditure of certain funds that
Tied solely to the
Either-
GMA,
being either in the comprehensive plan and or a CIP.
and so this document is required of us because we are a part of the GMA.
It's not required. The CFP is required. This is like I said, a standalone document, but it's also integrated in. And if a project or proposal is listed in the CIP or the CFP, it qualifies for those funds.
So we did this on our own. There was nobody required us to do this.
This is correct. I have experience with the CIP. I personally think that it's a document that the county would benefit from, and so I did this. And this is from my experience as a planner. I was responsible for doing this for the jurisdiction I was in before. I understand, you know, the purpose and process, and I think it's a good document for the county to adopt, which is why I've gone through the effort of producing it. But no, there is no mandate. It just allows us more flexibility on how we deal with certain projects and funding mechanisms.
Okay, thank you. It is good to go through here and have an understanding of what our assets are and how they're managed and controlled. That part is very helpful. There's a number of different cards I have about different, or questions I have about different components of it, but I think I understand the purpose of it now, and appreciate your diligence on this. This didn't happen in a weekend.
No, it did not.
Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. That was
Yep, thank you, Derek.
good information.
Thank you. So, I've never done one. Do I bring this back next week for action? Or is
Yeah,
that?
this is only a
that
workshop,
how that works?
yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure, so. And you guys want to see it next week?
Well, there shouldn't have been a resolution next to this. On a workshop, there shouldn't be a resolution number beside it. It's just, we're talking about it. And then-
Right, but remember, this was originally introduced to the board as a regular item. That's why the
Right.
resolution exists. So that's, or
Mr.
are you
Chair,
saying on the agenda?
it would be of
something
my
there?
opinion that probably not quite next week, to give us a chance to read through it. I try to read a document several times, and a little bit of time pass in between so that I can think it through.
Okay.
And so maybe not quite next week, but a couple of weeks away, I don't
And
see a
yes,
problem.
please, if you see things or have questions, especially since we're going to take some time between now and adoption, let me know. If I can correct it, I will. Some of the things are just historical information, and I don't have any control or can't change the past.
Yeah, thank you.
So,
All right, thank you, Derek.
thank you.
Number 2, presentation of the emergency 911 sales tax discussion.
Good late morning, Commissioners. Thank you so much for your time. And we are here to present 911 funding options for Franklin County. The 13 fire and law agencies for our county asked me to present this. And if you have any questions, representatives from our Sheriff's Office will be happy to answer that after the presentation. So this commission is very much aware of our situation right now. Infrastructure is in decline beyond repair. It's almost to a point where it'd be like asking your computer experts to fix a Windows 95 browser on your computer. We've heard stories about going out to eBay and getting parts because the manufacturer does not have any more parts, and we're starting to run out or pretty much exhaust what we've had on eBay. So there is a need for also rural areas in Franklin County suffering from dead zones. A radio upgrade is going to take care of that. And even right now, if there's a failure in our microwave or our infrastructure that loses a channel, we could have dead zones between Franklin County and Pasco in the city of Pasco. That's the situation we are in. It is inevitable. The system will fail. And the need to upgrade, it seems the radio and fire have settled in our area upon 800 megahertz capabilities for towers and radios. So the current funding for 911 from user agencies, that only funds the basic services for our 911 services. Public and first responder safety is currently at risk. Again, speaking of those channels that could go down, what if an officer needs backup and is unable to get that call through? What if somebody is in need of medical attention and we're not able to get a first responder to them? That is what we're talking about, people in danger. And the microwave infrastructure will cost in the 8-figure range, between 10 and 20 million for the entire region. Again, the numbers have kind of been all over the place, but that is where it should fall. So taxing options for your consideration, there are 2. The E911 tax, that is a 1 cent per $10 purchase sales tax for Franklin County. The other one is, and I'll get into the differences here in a bit, is the communication tax. You can go up to 2 cents per every $10 purchase for Franklin County. Kittitas County passed this initiative just last month in a special election with a 63% overwhelming support from their citizens. So for both taxes, the taxes would apply to residents and visitors to our county who rely on emergency services. Both are 50% plus 1 for passage. It would be on the Tuesday, November 5th presidential ballot this year. And if passed, the communication, just to extrapolate, it would be $20. This is for the communication tax only. It'd be $20 for a $1,000 purchase. So this is not to be confused with the public safety tax. Commissioner Didier, you just brought this one up. That is a 0.3%. That was voted on in 2014. It was extended last year in the November election. And as our sheriff chronicled, the funds for Franklin County go to corrections and interest on capital. We talked with the Pasco police chief yesterday. Their funds using to pay a bond on the police headquarters and their street crimes unit. This revenue is already earmarked into the future. I just didn't want there to be any confusion with the taxes. So differences between these two taxes that we're talking about, the 911 tax, the funds here can only be used for 911 dispatch center phone services, security, maintenance costs, just for the 911 center. It can also go towards a secondary EOC center, emergency operating center, since we really don't have a secondary one of those besides CCOM in Richland. The communications tax is a little bit more flexible. These funds can be used for 911 communications, but also towards the infrastructure, microwave, and the radios that we've been talking about for the past couple of months, if not years. So how the taxes will be used, an estimated $4 million will be raised on every 1 cent per $10 sales tax. Sustainable, that is underlined, bolded for a reason. This would be a sustainable source of funding for emergency communications and 911, depending on the tax. Enhanced coordination with all emergency agencies in and about Franklin County. That would be where our radio systems would be similar or same, so there is no dropped calls. There is no confusion between agencies. And the funding will also, this is for the E911, go towards that secondary emergency operations center I was talking about. We just had a FEMA exercise 2 months ago which simulated a disaster in the Hanford site. And the plume from the Hanford went into CCOM. It went over CCOM. CCOM would have had to have been evacuated, and we would go to some secondary EOC centers, which are set up, but they would be overwhelmed in a disaster. So thus the need for a backup EOC center. Strategic importance, I've talked about this, kind of reiterating the need for getting off VHF and to the 800 megahertz capability for all systems. It would boost the overall effectiveness and cohesiveness with local agencies. So other fundraising efforts in our area. Before this board a couple months ago, Richland Fire Chief Thomas Huntington spoke with our own Michael Namachek, and he's leading an effort for all 24 local fire and law agencies, Franklin County included, to get funding from state and federal agencies. These are competitive grants. There is no guarantee of success, but if these are successful, these efforts will complement any shortfalls we have with infrastructure, radios, or the microwave. So tax initiative costs, the cost of filing the initiative per initiative is approximately $21,000. That is at a discount for the presidential campaign. There are so many initiatives and items on the ballot. They all share the cost. So we won't exactly know the exact cost until after the election, but it is around $21,000. And then we'd have to develop a volunteer organization for marketing efforts towards getting it out to the public. And speaking of which, need to educate city and county residents of the importance to pass the initiative if we deem it so. Continue to build cooperation with local organizations and leaders so we are all cohesive. And of course, the public is our bosses. Seek feedback and input on specific needs and priorities. So folks, the can has been kicked down the road long enough. These initiatives will help us, especially with our infrastructure microwave needs. Either tax is a fair tax for all. And I thank you, Commission, for your attention. If you have any questions, the Sheriff's Office will be happy to answer.
So I personally have heard that Franklin County's share alone is $18 million. So is that our share, or is that the total cost?
So my understanding is that's the total, but.
Split between the 5 communities?
Yes, but understand that in Benton County, the federal government built out their 800 system in the late 80s. And so their 800 system is way robust. So, and our problem is we need to strategically locate 2 probably 800 megahertz towers in the county last time I heard, they're about 10 million apiece, but people say it's gone down, and there's some other alternatives. For example, there is a tower that sits on the prison, up at the prison, that's an 800 tower, that some negotiations and contracts would allow, us, for a lack of better words, to put 800 equipment on that tower, which would cover a lot of area. Our major problem in the county is the Colotis area. Doesn't matter if it's VHF or 800 or all the things we've been doing. We're going to have to put some solid type of radio communications in there so that operations aren't affected at a state level, a county level, a state level, and so on. So my understanding is 18 million for the entire county. And then just as a segue so you have an understanding, so in 2017, Franklin County, the Sheriff's Office shut down our E911 center. And we have an E911 center that the first tax money paid for, but it sits empty, okay? The county, county-wide, we have one dispatch center, which is a wet center, meaning that if it caught on fire or if it's catastrophic, water's gonna dump on top of all the computers and electronics. So we need a dry dispatch center, meaning, chemicals, et cetera, et cetera. And we have a place for that. There's an agreement with all the county agencies that that's where our warm redundant center would be. And it's not in place, and we need to keep working on that. We have approximately right now a little bit under 100,000 that we've got established in grants for equipment inside the center, but we have a brick and mortar problem that it needs to be finished out, and then all the electronics and all those type of things need to be installed, and all that equipment needs to be protected properly. Probably more of an answer you're asking for.
So the biggest question I get from citizens in Franklin County is, what do other counties use? I mean, you take, for example, like Ferry or Stevens County, small counties that probably couldn't afford this. What do they use?
They're upgrading to microwave.
They are.
Which we need to do.
Okay.
And that's, you gotta upgrade that microwave, and the trend right now is to go 800 or 700 across the whole county, across the state. But everything on those little counties is based off the state's E911 systems. So they do whatever funding's available in the little counties for that. And they basically piggyback off the state's infrastructure, which is microwave.
So is that an option, or do we get those funds
No,
as well?
There is no option. We have to install the microwave systems throughout the county, throughout both counties. That was the one, that's what we were recently arguing over, for lack of better words, is how are we gonna pay for, I can't remember exactly what it was, about $500,000 apiece for the big five, what we call the big five. We're one of the big five. But that's just the base, that's just the foundation. Now you have to create the connectivity with some sort of megahertz or VHF, which doesn't exist anymore. And that's part of the problem. So you go microwave dish, or you go microwave 800, and the reality is that between the two counties, it's microwave 800. That's where everybody's going. So if we do not do something, then we further isolate our North County first responders. The Sheriff's Office begins to be isolated and has a hard time communicating, et cetera. So it's a two-step process. It's not gonna be fixed. First thing's gotta be fixed is the microwave, the foundation of the operating system.
So again, the total cost for Franklin County, the part the citizens would be responsible for, would be in the ballpark range of?
For Franklin County itself,
Yes.
I would estimate, depending on the cost of tower builds or contracts with stuff, that you're gonna be looking somewhere below 10 million a tower.
And how long will it take to build this infrastructure?
Get the equipment, put it up. So Connell actually the city of Connell actually owns a tower that is their own, that they privately own, for lack of better words, and it's a VHF tower is my understanding. I don't even know how they utilize it, but there's some infrastructure in Connell, which is one of the highest topographical areas in place that will decrease those costs to some sort, so long as we're figuring out. The biggest cost is, to be quite honest, is going to be in the Colotis area. And that's going to connect to more than just Benton and Franklin counties. That's going to reach out into Walla Walla County and, as far as connectivity and all that. So, I am not an IS person, but I have a good.
I don't think any of us are.
I have a good understanding of what took place, what we did in 2017, and how we got here today with the problem. And I could answer any of those questions. But the exact costs, I think, would probably need to come out of IS office, and Mike Namchek would be a part of that to give you the true answer of what that would cost today, or estimated costs would be, to finish out that whole microwave 800 portions of the E911 system.
And how long do we have to pay for this?
Pay for what?
The ask of $10 million for the
Oh,
microwave
well,
system.
you're going to utilize the funding if they pass the tax. You're going to take this funding and slowly build out and make that happen. So it's going to be reoccurring. And so you can basically budget and forecast ahead of time when this money's coming in, and it's simply earmarked for E911 communications and stuff, so it has to be directed to those things. So
the
if you
2/10 of
had to pay for example, $20 million, you had to bond out or take a loan for $20 million with Motorola to put up your 800 equipment and stuff, I'd imagine they're going to give a loan of some sort to make that happen, and this money would pay off that loan. And then once you got everything up and operating, then all the money would go into the Bi-County E911 CCOM system, which, by the way, was supposed to be a standalone public facilities district by now, the CCOM concept, and it's still not. And so it's important that we as the county, have our teeth, for lack of better words, in all this build out, so that we have a little bit more control of our own destiny.
And how long before this microwave system is outdated?
Microwave? Well, 800 has been, the microwave has been, I don't know, my understanding is 20 years microwave's been in place. That system, and it just takes continual upgrades, just like a computer, for lack of better words.
Sure.
And then 800's been around for a long time. And the thing with 800 is the multiple channels that you have access to. So you can set up car-to-car frequencies, SWAT frequencies, so on and so on. It takes them into a private mode, if you will. And they're clear. You're able to understand. You're getting no crackling or dead spots or those type of things. And so it's a more robust system that works well for both law enforcement and firefighting.
So will there be additional costs for the radios outside of this 10 million?
No, because radios, they're just over and over cost, if you will. So for us, we started with our duplex radio equipment. The sheriff's office, we wrote a grant that was about almost $900,000, where we equipped radios in all the patrol cars and on every officer's hip. And I think it was 2017 at the same time, for the Port of Pasco, Connell, the sheriff's office, some fire, up north fire components, and we replace them on a regular basis up until this year. So what we did is we replaced 3 portable radios and then mobile radios, car radios, 3 of each every year. And the problem with duplex radio equipment is it's about 3 times more than expensive than just an 800 portable or mobile. And so they're spendy. And we're going to be able to go away from that. Maintenance will be over. And if we go to the full concept of the CCOM standalone, every agency will lease portables and radio equipment per user from CCOM itself, and they'll be responsible for the maintenance and the replacement and all those type of things. So I would just have to budget for me how many radios I'm leasing for a cost, what it's going to cost. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. So my question would be, if a 0.2% sales tax is implemented, that's would roughly be 7 million a year. How many years? Does it just go in perpetuity, or does it?
Well, yeah, you have a sunset clause on the tax, or you as commissioners can go, well, we're not gonna use the tax anymore. But I suspect that won't be what happens. So if it's put in place, I suspect it'll be there. Just like the law enforcement taxes are there, just there, and then depends, you can set the sunset clauses, but.
I guess my question is, why would we continue to fund it if you're raising 7 million a year and the cost is 10 million? Why would we put that burden on the taxpayers for perpetuity?
Yeah, I'm not following your line of questions.
So if you raise $7 million a
taking
year, in 10
sales
years you have
tax,
$70 million for something that originally cost you 10. It's pretty simple math.
You gotta replace it.
That's
It's not gonna
what-
be there forever. You have to have continued maintenance and turning them over. But bottom line to your answer, if you think you can go it on your own down the road, then you just.
No, I'm just
don't
asking
take-
questions,
don't
because
take
these are the
tax.
questions I'm getting asked by the citizens of Franklin County, the people that are actually paying the tax.
We're all paying the tax.
Everybody's
It's a-
paying
it's
the
a sales
tax. And these are the people that are coming and asking these questions to me, so don't blame the messenger.
Oh, I'm
asking.
I'm not taking it that way.
So-
It is totally in control of in the commissioner's hands. Once it's passed, they can decide, well, we don't need it anymore. But I'm suspecting that when you say we don't need it anymore, you're gonna find that that's not the reality of the increase of communication costs in public safety sector. They just keep climbing and climbing, and we have no sustainable revenue to meet those needs without going to the taxpayer and asking them what they think. And then the other thing is you always have to keep in mind it's a sales tax. It's not a property tax, it's a sales tax. And everybody pays that tax. And so it's probably the best way, taxing-wise, to cover some of these necessities in government that we need to do. And then you just send it to the voters and they decide. My question back to you is, what's gonna happen if they say no? Where are you gonna get the money from?
Yeah. I guess my biggest question would be, if the infrastructure is the majority cost, once it's in place, then you would think only the radios would need to be replaced, with maintenance to the infrastructure, but it's not like we're putting up more towers every year.
No, the towers will always be in place and paid for, but what you're putting up there only has a certain shelf life. So whatever microwave you're putting up has a certain shelf life.
Well, that was my
Whatever-
question earlier, is how long this equipment is before it's
Yeah,
outdated.
you'd have to talk to somebody that knows something about all the equipment, what the shelf lives are. I know that most of the equipment is generally, it's Motorola that has most of that equipment, and they do the leasing or selling of that equipment. And they only hold on to the warranties for so long. For example, we have an entire set of radios in the sheriff's office that aren't supported anymore.
Have you thought about putting them on eBay?
No. No, not gonna put them on eBay. They're just not supported. So if they die, if a portable radio dies, then we have to buy a new portable radio to put it in the deputy's hands. And right now, I think they're about $7,500 a portable. And so they're like a car. They only have so much mileage to them, and they only have so much warranty to them. So you're gonna be always rotating, constantly looking at that. That's why I've tried to stress to you all long ago that we're better off replacing X amount of portables, X amount of car radios, X amount of guns every year, whether you need it or not, so that when you come to the point we are in our E911 system, you're not facing such a catastrophe, you're partly there. Same with grants, that's why I mentioned that we have around $100,000 worth of equipment grant money to put in the Warm Redundant Backup Center. It's just that when we purchase it, we're gonna set it on a cement floor and not be able to plug it in. But we're gonna do that. And by the time we get to it, all that we're buying probably will have lost its warranties. But at least we've got something there as we start.
All right. Any further questions?
I'll just make a comment that in this, that Derek brought forward, the capital improvement plan, that it mentions that CCOM services the following agencies in Franklin County: Franklin County Fire Protection Districts 1 through 5, City of Pasco Police and Fire, Pasco Airport, Franklin County Sheriff's Office, City of Connell Police and Fire. It does not mention EMS, ambulances, and they're included in this too. I don't know
For
if that,
radio services? Is that what you mean?
yeah, they're not
Oh,
mentioned in this at all.
That's easy. The sheriff's office pays for their calls.
I think they should be mentioned in there too, because ambulance service is critical in Franklin County.
You got no argument from me.
Couple of questions for you, Sheriff. I've been digging in, trying to understand this as much as I can. Would you speak to the redundant dispatch center? I thought that there was supposed to be some monies haven't been put aside back when we agreed to incorporate with BCES or CCOM, that some of that was supposed to be taken care of. Could you speak to that?
So when Franklin County shut down their E911 center, there was agreement with the commissioners of both counties, the states and cities, that we all would have equal ownership, 1/5 ownership, okay? And part of that was for CCOM to be a standalone public facilities district, that we'd upgrade all the radio systems, and that we'd have a warm redundant center, okay? Which is a big lift, except for if you start picking at it year by year, okay? And Franklin County residents and City of Pasco residents, we each wrote about $1 million checks to be 1/5 owners in the CCOM system. Back, I believe it was 2016 or 17 that we did that, okay? We then shut down all of our employees that were working for the sheriff, all that stuff, anything E911, and we contracted with CCOM with an overall goal of just what I mentioned. And we also wrote checks. And then in addition, the sheriff's office picked up all the calls for service for EMS in North County and all that, and the sheriff's office, you all, paid for those service calls through the sheriff's office, okay? And then the sheriff's office itself took on additional charges for when we might be on the 800 systems, because when we're in town, we can be on 800, okay? And we started paying additional fees for being on the 800 system, because Fire wanted to build out a VHF system, and they wanted to have total control of a VHF system, even though they were told that's like putting money into a three-legged horse, but they wanted to do that. And so that's what's been concentrated on up until everybody had an epiphany, well, that's not gonna work. So that's where we got where we're at today, and what hasn't occurred is CCOM's not a standalone. You've already bought your 1/5 ownership into the concept, the business model. You've been participating in the concept model, but Richland runs the show, for a lack of better words, right now. And so that needs to be straightened out along with everything else that's going on. But you've already paid to be a 1/5 owner in CCOM, what we'll use as CCOM, and you did it long ago. And then you started again with the microwave thing, the contracts with the contract things that got sticky. And somehow it developed into the, when we're done with the microwave system, maybe Jeff can fill that in, and it's built out that we're 1/5 owners of the microwave system in general. And that's kind of a broad statement of it. Now, Jim Raymond, as the sheriff, says, let's not be fools. Everything we put, every infrastructure we put in Franklin County, we need to have ownership of it, and we need to have the ability, should those catastrophic events, that we can flick the switches and turn all of our PSAPs into the warm redundant dispatch center, so on, so that we can operate in catastrophic times. Or, Lord, I hope it never happens, but politics gets involved and everybody goes, well, go your own way. So we have to be willing and able that should that ever come, that we have the ability to stand ourselves up and run our own emergency 911 systems and still be partners with CCOM, but we need to have that ability because you own 2 PSAPs, which is public safety answering points. You own a hollow dispatch center and so on and so on. And so we want to keep some sort of legal ownership of those should everything go south, because the responsibility of E911, you all are in charge of the finances of it. I'm in charge of the delivery and operations of E911. Is that helpful?
That's helpful. It's a lot of spaghetti to go through one noodle at a time, and I'm trying, but yeah, that's helpful. Mr. Chair, if you're willing, I see the Connell Police Chief in the room, and my understanding is, and you would correct me if I'm wrong, you have an understanding of the way CCOM operates, and we're a part of that at one point, if I understand correctly. And so he mentioned you guys have a tower. If you were a part of CCOM and you guys have a tower now in Connell and that kind of thing, how this is an elephant that we're trying to figure out how to eat, but I think we're not necessarily sure how to make a bite at a time.
Absolutely, yes. One of my roles previous to my position here as the chief for Connell was the BCS manager interim when I was employed by the city of Richland. So we've got multiple towers that are all over actually a 3-county area, Benton, Franklin, as well as Klickitat County. One of the towers is up in Connell. We've got to determine the ownership of it. I was talking in the back. I'm not sure if we own it as far as the city or if who actually has the ownership of that tower, but it is there on the east side of town. As the sheriff had talked about, the prison does run a 800 system, but the prison's 800 system is not the same 800 that we run down here. So they're a non-trunked system, so it's not compatible. We would have to upgrade some of the equipment that's on that tower for it to be functional for us for emergency services. And if I could, hopefully explain it maybe in a different way than what's already been talked about. The microwave system is the backbone that everything runs off of. That's not a frequency. The VHF 700 or 800 is a frequency that runs off of that system. So although we've got to upgrade the microwave system, that's necessary and that's failing. And if that fails, we lose all communication abilities, no matter what frequency you're on. The VHF is also 20 years past its service life, and there's no way that that can be repaired. So that has to be upgraded to a different frequency system, whether we do 700 or 800. And based upon what the consultant recommended was all police and fire, all EMS go to a 700 or an 800 system. It doesn't make sense to maintain 2 different systems, so fire agreed to migrate to 800. Because if not, if we maintained a 700 system and an 800, it'd be the same as though we were doing VHF and 800. We'd be paying twice as much money to maintain 2 different systems when we really only need 1. So hopefully maybe that explained a little bit of the system a little bit better.
Yeah,
The long run drives the cost.
I appreciate that, understanding the difference in the backbone versus the actual communication component of it. So I appreciate that. So at the BCES board meeting, the most recent one, they presented some maps that showed coverage. And so I don't know which one of you is the one to answer this, but the map, they had 2 maps. One of them was what they believe the coverage will look like with an upgrade, and one was what they said it was our current coverage. And that current map showed about 80% where the coverage was inadequate in the county. And we have at least 3 fire stations that are in the area that they showed no coverage or very inadequate coverage. do we actually have an 80% shadow across the county where we don't have adequate coverage? And what does that mean, inadequate coverage?
So I'll do it simplicity and then he can answer the complicated part of it. So if I have a deputy that's running around in the city of Pasco, we could be covered on 800, okay? With the microwave upgrades, of course, okay? But the minute I get just a little bit north of here, I lose all 800 coverage, okay? Until I get north of Connell. Okay, north of Connell is like, I can talk on 800 in Ephrata, but that doesn't do me any good. So the shadow that you're talking about is really all North Franklin County. And by strategically placing the towers in the right places, then it all connects. And it all connects to BCS and CCOM and all that, so you have better connectivity. And then everybody will be on the same band, 800, but we'll all have different channels. You know, fire departments will have all different channels they'll work off of. Connell Hospital ambulances, they'll have their own channel, so on and so on. But then the repeated channels will be shared. Am I saying that right? Yeah, they'll be shared, and then they'll be managed and oversaw by CCOM and the boards. That this is how we're going to use these frequencies. But by opening it up to 800, you just basically open up a plethora of channels for people to use in public safety.
I appreciate that. They showed just the east edge of town, well, out the Pasco-Clotis Highway where we have a fire station. They showed that was miles outside of coverage, and I was fairly familiar with the area, and the shadow that they showed that we have very inadequate services didn't seem to be like good information, but you would know much better than me.
Patch will be second, but initially we're talking about the radio coverage, and I think if I remember right, I saw a slide on that, and it was about portable radio coverage, which is different compared to a base or a mobile radio coverage. Understanding that the antennas is going to play a big factor as to what our connectivity is. But if you think of a tower and the cone that comes down, just like a cell tower, that's where you're going to get that lack of radio frequency or radio coverage. And unless we have overlapping coverage or we can microwave it from one area to the next, you're losing that connectivity. So the map you saw is not inaccurate, that we have a lot of area that is not covered currently, and that's where a tower would definitely help. The Red Mountain Tower project that's currently underway is going to help for west end of Benton County and could extend over into North Franklin County, but very minimalistic. And as we run today, we have to run patches on the back end, so CCOM has to actually program and say, these frequencies can talk to each other over the different bandwidths, and that's how we communicate. It's very, as it stands currently, holistically for emergency response, police and fire are on two different radio frequencies, two different communication types, so we don't have a lot of interoperability without having some other influence or other connectivity. Once we go to 800, we would all be able to switch over to the different frequencies and communicate very freely and very fluidly compared to where we're at now. That's the other advantage, and one of the things I talk to people about when they ask me, is there a need for this, is having that interoperability amongst all first responders to be able to communicate and communicate more effectively, no matter what side of the water that you're on or what uniform that you're wearing.
Thank you both so much. I think that's all the questions that I have right now.
It's like taking two cans of empty cans of corn and putting a string between them and then tying knots, and that's what a patch does.
Sounds like to me that you're working on a public outreach promotional handout. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I guess my biggest question is, because this is such a large ask, and if Franklin County share is $10 million apiece, is our cost, and we're raising $7 million a year off of the 0.2% tax, it's gonna cost that much every year?
If I could, Chair, because I was actually going to, you'd asked that similarly before. So if we don't keep up with stuff, we're going to be in the exact same boat that we're in now,
Sure,
which we're 20 years beyond.
I can understand that, and I definitely understand the need.
The
these
other
are just
as-
what people are asking me.
Absolutely.
So, to sustain it and keep it operational, that's the same cost as buying it all brand new every year?
The other piece to that is we currently, if you look at CCOM structure, there's only 2 employees that deal with all the radio systems and all the IT systems. They have to contract out those services. So there's other things that we can explore, like actually having staff that go out and maintain our radio systems, that are out checking on the UPCs or checking on the different sites to make sure that they're operating properly, compared to having to contract that service out, either through Richland Radio Services or through Motorola. So those funds could go towards actually developing a holistic communication system compared to just very primitive as we are today. So those funds could be used for other things. And if the objective is to go to a standalone public communication system, they're gonna need those funds in order to be able to staff that properly, because all of those services currently are ran through the city of Richland under their administrative fees. So for HR, finances, legal, contract negotiations, all of that stuff is done through the city of Richland. If it becomes a standalone, you'll need the funds in order to be able to support all of that infrastructure, the human infrastructure as well as the communication infrastructure,
So essentially, Richland is subsidizing all of those services right now.
which all the business agencies pay a percentage. I believe it's up to 9% now for that administrative fee for them to manage CCOM.
So think about this way, so you have CCOM, if the world was perfect, CCOM would be the maintenance, leaser, fixer, all those things for the radio systems by countywide. Also the record systems, police records and all that, be centrally located in a dry environment, not a wet environment, in a dry environment. If you had a tower that went down in Colotus, then CCOM would be dispatched to go fix the tower and make sure that all the connectivity is in place and so on. So you're basically, in the long run, building a whole new organization that, but they equally, they answer to you and I 1/5, and they don't answer 100% to Richland in the long run. And yeah, it's expensive, but I know another way to put it, but you want that crap to work when you're getting shot at. You want that crap to work when you want to hold up your fire that's coming and tell them, nope, this is a hot zone, don't come, stand by. Or when you want to tell a fireman, hey, you're not in charge here, I need to get you out of my crime scene, and so on and so on. We need to have those, they're vital. And then the person calling the 911 line, you have to have people that are going to send it to the right place, the right direction, and that they're all on the same page holistically for 911 calls and so on and so on. It's just the wave of the future. Most parts of the state have already gotten there. We're just a long ways from getting there, and it's the way the state's going to force you, for lack of better words, to go, is communication centers that are regional and owned and operated regionally to get it done. And yeah, it's not cheap.
No, I definitely see the need and,
Yeah.
in the situation that we're in. I'm just
Right, I get it.
getting questions.
Absolutely, and if I can, I mean, just like the sheriff had talked about, you can always back down the tax. If you start off with initially with the 2/10 and decide, okay, we're bringing in too much money for the sustainability, or we can't realistically, dedicate this money to where it needs to go, you can go down to the 1/10, or you can dissolve the tax as well. But all those that I was involved in that have requested or had this approved went with the 2/10 to help support, because we've got to catch up from decades of being in the past and then prepare for the future. And only 1 or 2 maybe, and this is Oregon and Washington combined, ever went decreased after they were up to actually getting full staffing, getting their equipment in place, getting the portable that you talked about. If my portable goes down, I can go into them, change it out, they give me a brand new one, I'm back out on the road working. Compared to now, my portable goes down, I send it to Motorola, wait 3 to 6 weeks to get it back, and hopefully they can repair it. If they can't, then I've got to buy a new radio, and the current radio that I'm running now is no longer supported by Motorola, so I've got to buy all brand new radios once they can no longer service them, and they're $7,000 to $12,000 depending upon how you have them equipped. So it's not cheap, and it takes tons of time to get a turnaround. But if we can create a system to where they're in and out and functioning within minutes, That means that our first responders are out providing the service to our communities that they should be providing.
And the key takeaway is you three get a vote whether you want to decrease it or end it or all those type of things. That's in your all's hands.
It just always seems that once you put a tax in place, it never goes
Well,
away.
it's different
It's
than the Ben
challenging.
Franklin tax. Some of the other ones are, these two taxes that we've been primarily talking about are three taxes. They're simply, to be quite honest with you, once they're legislated and voted into place, they're in the control of the commissioners of the county.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Diddy?
Yeah, so listening to you, and I just want to be sure I'm on the right page. The 800 and the 700 are not compatible?
They are compatible, yes. The VHF and the 800 are not compatible without running a patch on the back end. We're currently running VHF and 800.
Okay.
The consultant that came in to assess our infrastructure, because fire wanted to maintain VHF for their communication piece, knowing that they were gonna have to replace the entire VHF system, decided, hey, let's look at some other communication piece or other frequency other than VHF that can support our needs, and the consultant recommended the 700. After that, they'd also go back to maintaining 2 radio frequencies at the tune of $7 to $9 million apiece. Why would we do that when we can merge them all
Right.
together?
And
And then that's
that's-
when fire came to the table and said, okay,
Because I've heard that down in Oregon, they're on the 700. We got all different configurations all around us, and I'm trying to figure out is why we're not working together. Maybe this is the leadership from the state is not putting us all in the same wavelength so we all can work together.
absolutely, Commissioner. I mean, I think
And-
you hit it right there. It's a
and-
bigger problem than just us here locally.
If they're gonna mandate us to have this, then that tower up there at Connell, I haven't got clarity of who owns it. Is it the prison that owns it?
So there is a tower for the prison for their system, and
Yeah.
then there is a tower to east of Connell, and that's where we gotta determine.
So there's
ownership.
2 towers in Connell.
Correct, but not on our system that has no, the tower of the prison is not affiliated with anything with,
Because
With
EMS services that prison.
it's not, yeah, the tower of the prison is not included in any of the studies, and it's not compatible with our system.
It's not.
No, it is not.
Because my statement was that EMS services that prison,
Right.
Franklin County. The governor is turning it into a geriatric prison. We're getting more and more calls there all the time. And I think our EMS could put the little pressure on them and say, hey, if you want us to keep servicing your prison, you need to work with us and make this an 800 tower.
So I'm clear, is all of my communications that I've had with the prison, they have had no pushback on cooperating and working with us or entertaining putting our equipment out
Okay.
there. It's a compatibility between their system and what we run for the rest of the bi-county.
The
'Cause
other-
They're not an 800 trunk, and that's what we need.
Gotcha.
So they were never taken into consideration with the study because they're a state entity on their own system. We're looking at all of our owned and operated, when I say our, the bi-county owned and operated infrastructure, and how can we improve that to minimize the amount of dead areas and enhance the level of service.
So the other things that come to mind is Juniper Dunes, that's a BLM. They want us to service that area. We need to put a little pressure on BLM. We got the Palouse Falls, he's turned that into a state park. We need to pressure our state to put up a tower there for ambulance calls, because we get them every year, multiple ones. Hanford, we're downwinders. We should be on that. We should be pressuring all these agencies for helping us get this communication put together. And for one, I'm not in for the communication tax of .02, because I want it to pass. I think we should go for the .01 right off the bat. And we can always ask the voters for an increase, but if we go for the whole enchilada and get nothing, we're in the same boat we're right now. That's all I got to say.
If I may,
Mr.
Chair.
Briggs has a question.
I had a couple observations, just to sort of fill in some gaps here. There's some question about why is Richland administering CCOM? Well, I think the reason is because CCOM isn't a separate legal entity, so can't really do anything on its own. So Richland is sort of the administrative arm of CCOM because it's not a standalone agency. If we do want to move forward and get this on the ballot, we'd need to act fast. There's certain deadlines, I think in August, that we've got to get, and hopefully sooner because I'm the one that reviews the ballot titles. But regardless, we'd want to get that stuff in order if that's where the board wants to go. And then once it's on the ballot, we've got to be real careful about how we discuss it in meetings, because then we're sort of triggering those Public Disclosure Commission requirements where I think the board is fine passing a resolution in support of a ballot measure, and answering questions from the media, but there are restrictions on using our official offices to support a ballot measure, so.
So let me put that in a little bit in perspective. So with your statement, Commissioner, if I go out to the Ford dealership and buy an $87,000 truck, I'm gonna get, at 0.2%, I'm going to have to pay about $150 of sales, additional sales tax. And so one of the other arguments that's been thrown about is all these businesses are going to, go somewhere else where the tax rate's cheaper. Well, that's BS. Bill McCurley's not gonna dig up all of his car sites in Franklin County and Pasco over $150 every time he sells a car. And at the end, that belongs to the voter. What happens if you put 2% up in it, the 0.2% and it passes? And the voter says, no, it passes. Then I guess it frees you up to, start talking about Ben Franklin tax and getting that changed and so on and so on. But it's kind of like, for me, it's kind of like, so you're going to leave money on the table when you haven't even asked the voters what it is they want? That's where I'm coming from.
I communicate with those voters every day.
Me too.
So they're telling me they're not gonna put up with any more taxation, and I'm trying to help you out here,
Well,
Sheriff. So-
let's let the voters find out.
Exactly, but
Let's
do we
let
wanna
the
put, do we
voters-
wanna put 2% on there, or 0.02, and it
I
fails? And it fails?
I
Then
don't-
where we got?
I don't know.
What do we have? Nothing. Same mess we're in right now, Sheriff.
I do. Yep. I want to be able to vote.
Oh, nobody's gonna keep you from voting.
Well, the tax on an $87,000 vehicle is a lot less than a $500,000 tractor.
Well, there's an answer to that when you actually put a moratorium on these sales for a $500,000 tractor, and you can certainly do it again.
Okay.
Just have to work it out. The tractors that people were buying up until recently, farm implements were excluded from this tax.
Okay, well, that's a good point, because they can surely go to a different county to buy a tractor of their choice, and
Well, if I was
we're gonna pay the tax
If I was gonna buy
either
an
way. I mean,
$87,000 Ford truck, I'd go to Oregon. So then
Yeah.
I know I come back, I only got certain taxes I'm gonna.
Doesn't work that way.
yeah, see, that's illegal.
All right.
So, any other further questions? All right, thank you, gentlemen, appreciate
you.
it.
You guys can start.
Presentation of the Lord's Sobering Center. Yeah. Welcome. Thank you for being patient.
Good morning. So we are here to provide the information as requested in last week's session regarding the budget that we were proposing. So there's 3 different levels. Mark Holyoke, our CEO, could not be here today, but we have Erica Weir. She's our Chief Financial Officer, and she'll be explaining the 3 different levels that we were proposing and what that means. And Mauricio's gonna set it up here for you guys to look at.
Good morning.
Good
Well,
morning.
I think that this is pretty self-explanatory. It's basically 3 scenarios, depending on where we feel like we can hire in the level of staffing that we need to run this sobering center.
It might be self-explanatory. I can't read it from here, but
I didn't know
sorry.
if you had hard copies or not today.
We do, thank you.
So on the low end, we're proposing an annual budget of $892,000. That's if we can get staff hired in at the lower end of the range we're proposing. The mid-range would be $962,000, and the high end, $1,032,000.
Any questions on the budget that we're proposing?
And Chair, if I may, just to lend some budgeting perspective, I have been in conversation with Benton County about this issue and also the Health Advisory Board. So Benton County has agreed if Lords can hit certain benchmarks in terms of getting this up and running, they would fund half of this structure and the program itself. They're not willing to put in any infrastructure costs to build anything, but certainly there was overwhelming support at the Health Advisory Board meeting for a sobering center in the meantime. I believe KGH is scheduled to open, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, December of '25?
That's what we heard.
Yeah, so essentially January 1st of '26. And still a lot of work to be done. And this is my opinion, the likelihood of that hitting that timeline, it's going to be a challenge, let's say. Not saying they're not going to do it. But certainly the need is there in the short run. The question mark really becomes how quickly can we get this up and running, or Lords can get this up and running, and then the funding mechanisms, Benton County is willing to pay half the cost. So just wanted to put that on the record.
Outside of the infrastructure.
Exactly. So if there's any infrastructure costs, and that's something I think that I need to clarify also, Nellie and Mauricio, in terms of the infrastructure costs, are you expecting these monies to help with that portion, or will you guys cover that cost?
That would be covered by us.
Okay, thank you.
Could you go to the next slide, please? Could you talk us through what the schedule would look like? I'm seeing 7 a.m. to 7:30 p.m.
Yeah, so we are looking at doing 12-hour shifts for each position. So that way we have 24-hour coverage there 7 days a week.
Okay, I'm sorry. I see it now. I was not seeing the overnight shift, but I do see it now.
So how will you deal with a 40-hour work week? You're just gonna have more employees to cover those shifts?
So they would work about 36 hours per shift, and they would not go into the 40 hours or minimize any overtime.
Do you foresee much difficulty in finding staffing?
Well, that's why we wanted to look at the 3 different levels, because, you know, employment right now and the hiring and all that is pretty expensive, and people are always asking for more money. So if we have those different options, then we would have more flexibility to be able to hire staff so we can be able to operate this.
So these three different yearly budget numbers would be, those three differences would solely be on staff compensation.
Yes.
Can you speak to timing as far as when you could open up and become operational?
So we are looking at, once we start the process at 6 months, that would be our goal. All depending on also Department of Health, because we would need to wait on their licensing and, you know, some other things that need to go into place before we can start seeing patients in there. But that's what we're shooting for, is 6 months.
Operational in 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, you'd be open a year ahead of the recovery center.
Yes, well, we wanted to, you know, we started this about a year ago.
Right.
And so there's been a lot of delays. I mean,
It's government.
it's just been a
There's gonna be
process.
delays.
So we wanted to have opened it up last year, but it just hasn't happened.
So what happens when both the recovery center and yourselves are open?
Well, the recovery center is going to offer different services. And I think one of them is a 23-hour relief program, which is very similar to what we're offering here, which is a sobering center. And, you know, I think that there's need in both counties that if we were looking at keeping this one open in Franklin County, it could continue to happen.
Commissioner Didier, do you have any comments?
Yeah, refresh my memory of your occupancy threshold,
So we were looking at 20 beds.
20 beds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if we don't have the need for 20 beds, are we going to adjust? I mean, we don't know what we're gonna get until we get it open. Are we looking at another location also? Because you know my concerns about this being located right next to the courthouse.
Right. Well, if we were to look at another location, then this budget would change, because then we are going to be looking at, you know, leasing that other location, and then it's going to delay the project, because we would need to then spend time looking for another location.
Would the sheriff's department be willing to come speak to this, your concern on the location?
Probably the best way for me to answer that is we take inmates out of the Franklin County Jail upwards to 12 times a day over to Our Lady of Lourdes and back and forth. This is going to be a semi-secure facility. It's a temporary sobering center. It's a short-term fix versus the long-term fix. And so you're not going to see any more traffic coming and going from the Our Lady of Lourdes campus than you already see. You might see a few Kennewick police cars or Benton County police cars bringing people there and dropping them off for services. Right, and this is not a long-term fix. Just being you gave me the mic, so the commissioners on both sides of the river appointed a board of professionals throughout the Bi-County area to bring recommendations back to you. This concept and this proposal was sent to the board, and the vote was 100% to open a temporary sobering center until the whole KGH model and the grape factory model could all be figured out. Currently today, if everything aligned, the emergency room area of Kennewick General, and Chris might be able to fill you in on that too, is due to open sometime in late 2025, which isn't realistic, to be honest with you. It ain't opening in 2025. But if it did, or it opened today, the coalition, the service providers, no one has the ability to stand up a 23-hour sobering center without partnerships and coordinations. So I would assume at the end of this, and their contracts, that they will be given an opportunity to bid to run the 23-hour sobering center at KGH. And if not, then they won't get any funding, but it then becomes the hospital. They can figure out if they want to keep their sobering center open or not. But I suspect what's going to happen is somewhere along the line they're going to blend in. Lourdes is going to blend into the sobering counseling portions of that via subcontractors. But this is what your boards is sent back to you recommended, is to open up a temporary sobering center for now so that we can start relieving some of the community pressures that exist. I understand they're going to put security in place for this so that there's not, you know, a bunch of noise, if you will, or people escaping without police being notified. And no one is for keeping it at Our Lady of Lourdes in the long run, but everybody's for let's open up a sobering center and do something to start impacting the community problems we have. I can guarantee I could take you on a walk around that area and I can find you half a dozen or somewhere north of homeless people laying in the alleys and the gutters and behind the bushes and all those places, or across in the park. So you're not going to see any more because these people are going to be brought into a controlled environment.
So what are we doing about our homeless situation?
What are we as in the county? We're doing absolutely nothing. We send money over to Benton County, and Benton County does their homeless counts and stuff over in Benton County, and we do nothing.
Well, I mean, I see people walking down the street and talking to themselves, yelling at themselves, yelling
Yep.
at anybody walking by, and
Or the other
think the
night,
big question
tried
is
to attack officers with a machete because of mental illness. Yeah, I mean, globally, or for the whole state, you're trying to put a series of services and, you know, warming centers and all those type of things to place people, because most of the time you're homeless or mentally ill and they're drug addicted. That's just the facts.
so with the sobering center, you'll be dropping off people there. Is it a walk-in sobering center? And if so, are they gonna be handing out any types of medication, I guess I should say?
So yeah, it is going to be a drop-in center, so people they don't have to be pre-authorized or anything like that to come in. We would get a call saying that, you know, if it's law enforcement saying that, you know, they have someone that they want to take there. We'll see if we have bed availability, and if we do, then, you know, we'll go through our process to get them in and, you know, be able to provide those services. We will have Narcan on, you know, on us there, so if we need to, we can utilize that when someone's coming, you know, in for fentanyl or any other type of opiate use, and if there's a risk in their withdrawals. So we would be definitely providing that there. If they need any additional, you know, medical assistance, then we would be utilizing our emergency room to be able to get them that medical assistance if we can't do that within, you know, our means there.
So question, Sheriff, on today, if there's an inmate that is served their time in the jail and there's not somebody there to pick them up, or, you know, that arrangement, what does that mechanism look like? Do they walk out onto the street and go to the bus stop?
Nope, they just walk out the back door of the jail and they just go where they're not. And at least if, with these type of services, we're able in a jail setting to plug them in together, I guess, for lack of better words. If the ER room, for example, if they have problems with inmates or something going on, I always get a call, and it's just because of the people I know at the hey, we got this problem, what should we do? And so we'll guide them and plug them in and help them do that. But I'm going to suspect, and hopefully Chris can come up and answer some of this too as we go along, is the majority of them will come from first responder drop-offs, because they're the ones that encounter the people, for a lack of better words. I'm not trying to stereotype it, but they're the ones that encounter, and it's going to be up to them to encourage them to, hey, let's go get you dried up, for a lack of better words. and see if we can plug you into services such as Medicare, Medicaid, insurance, whatever counseling's available, and so on and so on. So it's basically just gonna act as a trafficking point, trying to give people help and services, which, you know, hospitals generally do in some form or fashion.
Probably don't put that in the advertising
Yeah.
circular that
Yeah.
says it's a trafficking point.
But you're, you know, as an example of this cost, your mental health medical costs in the Franklin County Corrections Center are somewhere above $7 million a year now. So if we can alleviate some of those costs in one way or another, it's a win-win. And we're not putting them in jail, which basically means when you get sued because someone died in the jail, if we have this as an alternative, then maybe we can forego our suits that we're gonna pay down the end. I'll let legal give you that advice. It's an option for the first responders to try to handle things, and it's also an option for them to go, here, call Nellie, you know, if someone has a problem, so that they can make arrangements. And I think eventually you guys were gonna respond out if you had to, right? Is that off the table now?
So what we will have is we'll have some support there. So if we have someone coming in that has sobered up and they still need some mental health services, we will have someone that can then provide them that transportation to either Transitions or a psych hospital or some other agency where they can get that support.
So, Mike, question for you. So Benton County indicated they'd be willing to help pay for services, which this is what we have in front of us is services. Any idea what that mechanism would look like? Would it be a 50-50? Would it be a per individual treated, you know, coming from one of their agencies, or any idea?
Commissioner, I'm glad you asked that question, because I was going to ask the chair to speak on that. So my understanding, talking to Matt, is that it'll be a 50-50 share. And I've gotten this question a few times from people in the public, who's eligible? Because there was a thought, because it's in Pasco, that it's only serving Franklin County residents, but it will serve everybody from the region, and law enforcement, and whoever will take individuals there to go to the sobering center. You know, from a billing perspective, I don't know, and this is something I've been meaning to ask you guys, will you supplement with any Medicare, or will it be just straight payment from, you know, this particular taxing mechanism?
It would be straight payment.
Okay, and that was my thought. So, Commissioner, if that answers your question, and
That's helpful, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
That makes this more palatable from a standpoint of what our responsibility component would be. I know that something was said about potentially looking for other grant funding. Has there been any effort made on that, or is there any thought there?
Not for this project. We have not looked at anything else besides this tax money.
I just might add that if this is gonna be a regional sobering center, then we're gonna be bringing other counties' problems into our county, next to the courthouse. When the sheriff takes somebody over to Lord's, they're taken by an officer. This is not a mandatory facility to stay at. They can walk out at any time. So we will be populating our courthouse with more problems. That's my whole point. So
if
I'm
someone walks away, who are you gonna be notifying?
So we would notify the person that dropped them off.
Oh, okay. Like I said, I'm all for this, but not at this location. And Lord's is down the street. He lets people out on the other street, on the back side of the courthouse. There isn't a gate that opens up and gives us free access to the courthouse. That's what concerns me. When that gate opens up and somebody pulls in that parking lot, somebody can walk right into our secure facility there. We're already having people concerned about their safety in the courthouse. I think we're just gonna exacerbate that.
I see Mr. Jensen in the audience. Would you like to speak? 'Cause we'll open it up for public comment. So if you'd like to comment on this, we'll take turns, and you have 3 minutes. Yes.
So my name is Chris Jensen. I've been before you here a few weeks ago as a board member of the Benton Franklin Coalition, Recovery Coalition. I'm here today as Chris Jensen.
while I'm not speaking officially for the coalition, I can tell you we've talked about this on our board and with others, both on the committee, and for the most part, people just feel it's the right thing to do to support both. Recognizing that it's difficult to you to pencil things out in a way that could sustain that over a long period of time, but the residents of both counties have waited a long time for something to happen, and I think we're all frustrated in terms of, we've had citizens of both counties speak loudly a few years ago that the 1/10 of 1% for both the mental health and a sobering center, a recovery center, whatever you identify it as, is just woefully needed in this community, and we've got to make it happen. And they've been paying that for a period of time to where a bank account is now established in both counties that hopefully is sufficient to not only support and fund the development of the recovery center at KGH, but services on a more immediate basis are certainly needed and certainly supported. I see my personal belief is that we could stand up another half a dozen of these types of facilities, and there'd be still a waiting line in those needing the services that these facilities are intended to provide. That's just the epidemic that we face not only in our community but across the country. But I also see that over time that a merger, once KGH is at a point where it's operational and in a phase of perhaps the second phase where it expands, a collaboration of a one-stop shop. Conversely, it might pencil out to where both centers are the need for the community and work out best. I guess none of us have that crystal ball. But I think it's fair to say that we've all heard the not so good news about what's gone on in the past, about more focus on why we can't accomplish this versus how we can. And I think really the mindset and what I'm seeing from both sides of the river, and from the commissioners, from the coalition, from the committee, mental health committee that y'all established to help guide this process, that we've got to get past our differences and about competition and all the things that are standing in the way, and figure out how we can make this happen on both fronts versus why we cannot. And so personally, I support the Sobering Center. Commissioner Didier, I share your concern about location. My guess is that at some point that location will perhaps merge with KGH or be located somewhere else, perhaps. But for the immediate need, I think this is good for both communities and good for the Tri-Cities as a whole. Like I said, the way I pencil it out, and the way I've talked to some of you individually and the county administrator as well, is that perhaps the immediate steps is to be able to fund the initial operation of both, the Sobering Center not needing the infrastructure part of it, but once it's stood up, the continuing maintenance part of it. And I'm glad to see Benton County share in that regard. It just shows that we're all recognizing the need, and I think that's a good thing. And then as you well know, the funding for the Columbia Valley Center has been met with code things, costs, bringing things up to code, and other costs that have increased the price, and you know, Franklin County's contribution to get that center up and running would be a huge step in the right direction in terms of getting it operational and keeping it on track. Hopefully that December date is fairly close. Our contractor is we're at the final stages of getting the final design, and in fact, you all will be invited to a meeting, I think it's on the 12th, or a celebration, or a tour, if you will, and an informational gathering of the center that you could actually visualize and see design drawings and whatnot, where actually your money is going, and what the center would look like in phase one. So, but really, the focus of this conversation is on the sobering center, and I just want to emphasize that from my perspective, and I think from those I talk to, and on the boards and commissions that I serve on, is that you know, we've got to collaborate, and we're supportive of this effort.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I guess my concern would be, obviously, the need is most definitely there, and it's for the betterment of our community. When we voted in the 1/10 of 1% mental health tax, which I was on the board that supported that and put it in place, it was my understanding that it was totally going to the Mental Health Recovery Center. So I am in support of Lourdes and the Recovery Center. I just don't want to jeopardize the Recovery Center as far as slowing down the progress by releasing too much of the funds. It's my understanding that the Recovery Center has asked for a commitment of $5 million in order to stay on projected building it out. Is that correct, or? I hate to ask the public for this, but.
The current funds have been collected up to this point. You know, there was some hurdles to get over in terms of could the funding of the 1/10 of 1% on both sides of the river, for that matter, go toward the actual construction of the facility, and there were some limitations on brick and mortar and new construction, but with legislation clarification, remodeling, which would qualify for both centers, would qualify for the 1/10 of 1%, and that would greatly help in terms of getting the center open. And then in the meantime, you would be collecting the, what is it, 3, 4, 5 million by the time the center was open, that would help sustain it after that point, and that would be a continuum.
Currently, it raises a little over $3 million a year, but it was brought to my attention that there was a need for basically the $5 million ask in order to keep the Recovery Center on project. And so, like I said, I am supportive of both of them. It's what's best for the community, but like I said, I don't want to jeopardize any funding that may go towards the Recovery Center, if that makes
Yeah, Chair,
sense.
if I
Yes.
may, to lend some perspective to where you're going with that. So currently Benton County has about 21 million. They anticipate the center's gonna cost around 28. So when I talked to Matt Rasmussen yesterday, we exchanged some emails, and what he indicated that certainly if we dedicated money to the project, it would help things, certainly. So we're not required to, but it would be extremely helpful. It would help the process move forward, and he said they'd probably help with upgrades to patient rooms or maybe additional rooms if necessary, but so definitely want to put that on the record, that if we decided to give a huge sum like that, he said it would be very helpful. We talked about, would we get an equity stake in the property? He said Benton County, he was being very frank, was not interested in, us being owners in the facility, and Benton County would own that solely. But, certainly it would be a great partnership, and it's going to serve both Franklin and Benton counties. So I just wanted to get that out there.
Yeah, well, there's definitely a need, and we definitely need to get working on
Absolutely.
taking out the progression of it, so. Any further questions?
So on that, Mike, so it'd be Benton County's intention for us to gift $5 million to them, and we would not have any equity stake nor decision-making. That would not, it would simply be a gift from us to them for running,
Right.
building the facility.
That is my understanding at this point, so it would be helpful and much appreciated, and, our voice would certainly be heard on the Benton Franklin Health Advisory Board, which Sheriff is a part of. I know Judge Trinity Orozco is now on the board. I'm a non-voting member, but I attend the meetings, and, so we certainly have a voice on there, and, any of our concerns at the commission, we can express through that vehicle, but.
I've been expressing concerns for a while now. They have $23 million in hand that they have already received and is in waiting to build this facility. They believe that they need an additional $5 million. Those things, having a background in construction, tells me
Right.
they have some very, very specifics. I have not been able to get any of those specifics. So there is a definite plan in place. I don't know what that plan is, and so I am not supportive of giving $5 million when they are unwilling to show me what the plan is. I am very, very in favor of this center and want to help it happen, but a part of my responsibility is understanding what's going on. And so I've been asking this question. I've been working really hard. I've had lots and lots of conversations over the last month trying to get information, and as of this moment, I have gotten virtually none. And so I would like to know what the plan is. Everybody references the plan. I've heard that comment dozens of times referencing the plan, and I appreciate that. However, I don't know what the plan is, and so for me to be supportive of that, I need to understand what the plan is, and I don't know how to say it more bluntly or specifically than that. I want to know what the plan is, and I don't want to wait any longer.
Sure.
I want to know what the plan is. So please portray that to whoever needs to hear it. I want to know
Absolutely.
what the plan is.
And I know Boughton Construction has been selected for the plan design and the upgrades. Let me check with Matt Rasmussen, who's been great, in terms of asking questions and
I understand enough about construction that I understand that there is a plan. There's
Right.
very
Let me
specific
find
plans
that.
in place. I appreciate that.
I'll report.
Yeah,
So
and I would like to see the plan as
Yeah.
well, but I will also say that when I voted for the 1/10 of 1% tax, my understanding, 100% of it was going to the recovery center.
Excuse me, Commissioners. So we need to get going, but we just wanted to say, this is something we want to offer to the community. If, when you guys make a decision, if we can know, then we can start our process. If it's a no, then,
Well, it sounds like
we'll.
you have the support
so
from Benton
we'll
and
move
Franklin
forward.
counties. I just, like I said, want to reiterate that we definitely cannot slow down the progress of the recovery center. That's
Okay.
my opinion, but.
Thank you for
Yeah,
your time.
thank you. Appreciate it.
And Chair, I'll work on getting all that information for the group, and I'll
thank you.
present it next Wednesday.
And as you said, Chair, that this mental health tax has brought in, a little bit over $3 million a year. The part that I would really like to understand is that what it's gonna take to operate this center? So far, I haven't heard almost any details about what the plan is. I keep hearing about the plan, but I have no idea what the plan is. Is it going to take $3.1 million from Franklin County simply to operate this facility? And Benton County is roughly twice what we are. So, that's just short of $10 million a year. Is that a real number of what it's gonna take to operate this center? I don't know. We're headed towards opening a center that, they believe that they can open in a year and a half from now, and they have a plan. I don't know what the plan is, and so I don't know if this is a good idea or not on the $5 million. I believe the center needs to happen. I want to know what the plan is.
Sure, I can understand that.
In terms of, hear you loud and clear, Commissioner, in terms of your frustration without, of wanting to see if you're going to contribute $5 million, where's that going, what's it look like, and not only for you and your sake, but for the community that you serve. When people have those questions, you can intelligently answer those. I know that the plan has been a moving target, and it is now getting honed down to a true plan that is being close to being at a point where it can be presented to not only you folks, but the community as well, in terms of, this is the funding level we're at, with or without the 5 million of your contribution. Like you say, we're at 23, 28 gets us, more space, more beds, more services, and perhaps even a faster track of opening. That vision will emerge soon. In fact, I'm told that perhaps maybe within the next few days, in preparation for the June 12th, I think it is, where we actually, you're invited to a tour and a more comprehensive Q&A session where you can get your questions answered. You can visualize, you can see through artist renderings of what the center is going to look like, and those types of things. So while I share your frustration and I hear your frustration, don't have all the answers because I'm new to this initiative myself just over the last few months and trying to, a little bit of drinking from the fire hose there, but again, I think we're at a point where things are starting to come together, and you'll see some real some information to help you make an informed decision.
I appreciate that. I went and visited the facility the other day, uninvited, because I can't get an invite, and I can't get anybody to show me what the plan is or what's going on or where we're headed. And somebody with a long background in construction, I understand kind of the process that is necessary to go through to do this. I'm not a hospital remodeler, but I do understand the process, and I simply cannot get any answers. And I have been fielding calls from the community saying, are you guys really going to give them $5 million and you don't know what it's for? And so for me, the answer to that is no. I do believe that this needs to happen, but I can't get any answers.
Understood.
Thank you.
So, real quick, don't confuse this presentation with all that.
Completely understand.
This is just a temporary solution to a long-time problem that needs to be solved in increments. They're going to be basically just a temporary one-stop location for law enforcement and walk-in and stuff like exists in all communities. And they understand and know that they may be that location today, but 12 months from now, should the KGH Center magically open, that they're no longer part of that game. That money that they're receiving has to go back to the board members that are advising y'all to be reconsidered. So totally different.
I understand that they're completely separate.
Yeah, the KGH building was bought by state tax dollars that were allocated through legislative things, and Benton County clearly in the very beginning, in fact, it was Jerome Devlin, made the statement, we'll own it, we'll build it, we'll take care of it. I don't know that that ever changed. Sounds like it hasn't, considering what he's just said. So don't get confused with construction versus services.
So there's large as services only, there would be no contribution from Franklin County to infrastructure?
Over KGH?
No, here.
No, there's some infrastructure that they'll be able to use that money.
They said no. They just told us that.
That's right. Well, they're gonna be able to put security in place.
That's services, that's not
Services, yeah.
Yeah, I just,
infrastructure.
infrastructure, building, the
Infrastructure.
building, walls.
They already have it. I think they're already remodeling, if I remember right.
Okay. No, thanks for the clarification, appreciate it.
If I could add something
Yes.
briefly, Chair, and that's important. I think the reason why they pointed that out is we could run into potentially gifting, although they are providing a service. We don't want to be owning any infrastructure at Lord's. That also brings up potential liability issues. But I want to comment on Commissioner Bauman's concern regarding the $5 million. I don't think it would necessarily be gifting because it's another government entity, but it does raise this issue. I've brought it up before. It's basically one government fund can't benefit from another, and it applies to different government agencies. It's RCW 4309-210, subparagraph 3. Basically, it says any property transferred from one government entity to another shall be for its true and full value. So we wouldn't know if we're getting our money's worth, so to speak, unless we know what the $5 million is going to. And that section also goes on to say that no agency shall benefit in any financial manner, whatever, by an appropriation from another fund. So basically, one agency can't profit at the expense of another agency in providing services. It's not like a regular, business. So the relationship needs to be kind of a square deal. We need to know what we're getting from any money we give to Benton County. So I think that's a legitimate concern.
I guess my point was I thought 100% of what was raised off that tax was to go to the Recovery Center for the mental health. But
They did point out, I think, in their presentation, Lors, that at least one of the attachments I saw in their agenda packet showed what it can go for. And there's a number of things that tax revenue can be raised for. It has to be earmarked for certain types of services and infrastructure to provide those services. But I don't know that in past, we could say it specifically, it has to be a certain facility. But it would certainly need to be a facility that provides those services.
sure. Well, the whole purpose of the tax when it was passed was to build the Recovery Center.
Right.
So, but like I said, I support both because the need is most definitely there. So, yes.
All the discussion is just, I want to reiterate, it's very important that you guys plan a by-county meeting with the Benton commissioners, I think. So
Sure.
this is all, everybody's hearing the same thing. And also, I am also a member of the Bi-County Advisory Committee. Their meetings are the second Thursday of every month at 2 p.m. at the Benton County Commissioners Conference Room. So it'd be awesome if you guys could maybe attend, and the minutes are on their website also, though. So, because there's a lot of, I don't recall any of the 5 million coming to the advisory board discussions. And that doesn't mean, obviously, we're just recommending things to you guys. We don't get to make the decision, but that was the purpose of that thing being formed. So,
And thank you for that. That's my understanding as well, is you guys were not presented with that ask of $5 million. And the purpose of that board being set up was for you to advise both Benton and Franklin County on the operation and running of this facility. And so with you guys not even having the opportunity or being presented with this $5 million ask, I still don't know what it's for. And so thank you for
and
pointing that out.
I can't say that for sure, but I don't remember that happening. And just for the record, I am in support of both things here being presented. So, thanks.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else for public comment? Is there any more discussion?
No, sir.
I just wanted to say thank you to the AV team. Thank you so much.
Yeah, awesome job.
All righty, is there any other business?
No, sir, we are finished.
All righty. This workshop is adjourned. Thank you for all coming. Appreciate it.